so I'll actually present
just
those
today. Just today.
Today?
Yeah, just
Holy
today.
shit.
From like this looks small to you, right?
The move? Yeah,
This looks. I mean,
it's not huge. What percent is
but
that?
it's 81 to 83.
Okay, so
And
it's
that
no, that's
$2
kind of a
on
lot.
here is
That's
pretty
more than
big.
2%.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, real quick. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to a stream. So here's what we're gonna start doing. I'll just be really front about it and fast. For the most part, I think we're gonna try streaming every single day. I said that I would do that a while ago. Now we have a proper setup, room, and stuff like that. So now we can start doing that. So here we are. We're gonna basically stream the entire time that we're trading. Yeah. So welcome to the stream. If you guys want to talk, you can type hi in the chat. That kind of stuff. I have it open on my side. So we're good to go. And yeah, so it's not going to be exciting the whole time. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. Oh, nice. It's what, 300% on this? But then lost on this one. Okay, so, we'll go through all of that and talk about, various things. Things that we think are important to learn. Stuff like, holy shit, VFC is going to hit in the money, I think. If
What's your
falling.
strike?
My strike is 83.
Oh, nice.
After this earnings. So, but that's still pretty, not great. I could probably actually sell it soon. So yeah, so we're going to talk about a lot of different things. Today we're going to try to figure out some stuff about a thing called the ADD. So yeah, let me actually detach this before it's too late. So I can at least restructure this one. Okay, I'll just move the ADD off to the side then. Okay, cool. And we're alright. So what was the time interval that we wanted the ADD for? It was like a day, right?
Yeah, day.
Okay. Oops, that's not this ticker. Alright, there you go. Okay, this may look like a bunch of garbage. It kind of is right now for me too. But it's it basically represents the highs and lows of the volume, for that period, right? That's what it was.
This is an internal, so I don't know exactly what it's basing it off of yet.
I think it was, if I remember properly, it was it might have been the extremes.
Yeah.
So it's the extremes of purchasing prices and stuff like that. So
you want to check these days actually?
Yeah.
On SPY?
Yeah, we can. So we have a video off on the side. Do you want me to pull it up here instead?
Sure.
All right. So. Whoops.
Tick.
Should I write $8 on ADD?
Yeah.
These are some weird videos.
No, it's $sign tick. $signs tick. So not stick, but.
Oh.
Yeah, just type.
To make winning trade. What did you even type? I could just.
How to use ADD.
So I went through all this work.
Yeah.
To find this. It's SMB, right?
This is part one
Okay, this is not an
of our two-part video series. Awesome workshop. You're going to learn more in a couple of hours from this trading workshop than from years of online education.
All right. Yeah, so we're going to...
In retrospect, do you think it's going to double up the audio from the desktop? I think it might. So I'm going to go ahead and mute my audio capture. I'm just going to play the video.
We're going to talk about reading market internals and breadth indicators. For the sake of this example, they're basically the same thing. So let's start out, what are market internals? So the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Russell are all weighted averages of a basket of underlying stocks. This means that there's big companies like the FANGs, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Google, that can weigh heavily on the indice's price and cause them to be priced higher or lower, even if the overall market and the underlying stocks are not really showing the same level of strength and weakness. And in order to better gauge the overall health of the market, we can use these market internals or breadth indicators to help us look under the surface and see whether or not the indices weightings are overweight or underweight compared to what the majority of the stocks are doing. And this can really help us to gauge the strength of directional market moves as well. So there's certain types of market internals. For the sake of this, we're going to talk about the ADD and the NYSE tick. But unlike other indicators used by traders such as RSI, moving averages, MACD, whatever, those are all derivatives of price, whereas market internals are derivatives of the underlying market conditions. And the advanced decline line tracks how many stocks are currently trading above the previous day's close versus stocks that are trading below. And we could observe changes in this number over time, just like we would for the price of a stock. The NYSE tick tracks how many stocks are currently trading on an uptick versus those that are trading on downticks. Similarly, we can track movements in this as a short-term indicator.
Okay, so have you played around with MACD, with RSI, with other indicators? Do you use other indicators besides ADD and tick?
So the only time I would ever try and use like RSI is to kind of make analogs between my SPY trading when I'm trading in-play names to try and find areas of short-term price exhaustion. But if I'm trading SPY, I won't use anything that's a derivative of price except for daily chart moving averages.
And just to sort of set the context up for this, am I right in assuming that ADD and tick are indicators that you're using to help inform your decision making?
Correct.
You are not solely making decisions on ADD and or tick.
Right.
They are some of the variables that you're using to make trade decisions.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So basically, I'm using these as signals to gauge the overall strength of the market and to give me more conviction at certain key inflection areas. For me, I use market profile to build my inflection areas. Some other people use daily pivots and things of that nature. But for me, I use overall market structure in order to find the inflection areas, and then I look for signals in the AD or the tick to kind of lean on those zones.
Yeah, and you've been doing a better job of recent picking the days that you're going to skip
Right.
watching SPY, and the days that you're going to really give it your full attention. I think when we first started trading, here, you were trading SPY every day.
Yeah, exclusively.
Okay, and some people do that. Some people can do that. Obviously, there are people out there that make a lot of money trading the futures every day, and there are people out there that can trade the SPY every day. I think you found that didn't work for you, trading SPY every day. Am I right in saying that?
It's mostly I found other ways now.
Okay. So that's fine. I think there's something important actually going on right now. So there's something going on with Facebook. Facebook below 219.16. So take a look at that real quick. Right here. 219.6, you can actually start looking for puts. I'll set the level. Okay, so if it breaks this, you can start looking. Oh, fuck, I just hit it?
219.15 is that really?
Yeah, it just
2 days ago
sold
as well.
at it.
Yeah.
Let me actually open up some of these options.
So I mean, the support actually is 219 pretty much.
Let me actually open these up anyway. 43, so this is this week, so they're gonna be a little bit cheaper. 217 is so hit. You could hit actually. So taking support right now. So watch for a break. But you could also see a support coming in, so we'll have to wait.
Right.
Actually, I want to make sure the audio is coming out well, so I'm gonna test it one more time. Yeah, the audio is really good. Okay, so it's good enough for now. All right, so it took support. The option is kind of holding its sold value. That's because it's a 43 somewhere. Let me switch it up. That's a little too cheap. Let's do the 220s. All right, there we go. Now we'll see a little bit more of a reaction on these. I like this wicking here. I kind of like. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. See what's going on. The World Health Organization conference is currently happening. So that's, I don't know what that would have in terms of Facebook, but they call out a lot of things there. So. This looks like a trap, I guess. No, this is the low of day, so we gotta watch this for the thing. It's just breaking under right now. Level 2's weakening. Yep, it's tanking now. Press the option, just jumped a little bit. What do you think? Weakening, strong, things in?
Let's see.
Let me take a look at SPY too. Is SPY up there? Yeah. Could you? No, SPY's holding. So, yeah, this is independent. Facebook's dropping.
Yeah, you really want to see it below 219.
219, you think?
Yeah, if you go to the daily real quick, you'll see it.
Let me check out the
Oh, nice, my line appeared.
Oh, wait. Are these connected?
Yeah, go to Netflix actually. I want to see something. Netflix?
Yeah, sure.
Because I did something else just now. Nice. Okay.
So all your lines appear?
Yeah, wait, let me make a line right here and then you'll see. 1, 2, 3.
Right here?
Wait, did I remove it?
Wait, that's not possible. These aren't the same account.
They are, right?
No.
Oh, they aren't.
So I don't understand why.
Oh, my bad.
How did that happen then? Or did you
Wait,
draw these
go to
earlier?
Facebook again? I guess I drew it on there too.
I guess so.
Yeah, I guess I drew the same exact one there.
Okay.
Yeah, but below 219.
Nice. Okay. Below 219. I think this drop itself is pretty good, but it only moved about $10 on this option, which is a little bit less than 10%.
Right. I think this would probably be a good support then.
219?
Yeah, more than a drop.
It
These
depends.
things tend to.
This could actually turn into a downward expectation as far as this earnings goes, and so
Okay.
that's what I'm looking for right now. 219.37 is the site level of support here, which is I think where we put this. No, it's a little too high. 219 is about where it is. So we'll see. I mean, if it breaks this level, you can actually start seeing a channel maybe start forming around here. So might see a little recovery, come up to 220, 221, and then kind of go back down into earnings. And then from earnings, it might make a different formation. But I do like Facebook in the put side right now.
Yeah.
So that is something. Do I need this off to the side?
You want to keep an eye on Netflix.
We have Netflix up over there. Yeah. So it's looking at the top. Did you put that? Oh yeah, these are all connected to the same computer. So. Yeah, the 5 minute on this one isn't great. I don't like using the 5 minute. I'm gonna use the 15. That's a little better. So the 1 and 5 are good for me. They give me a lot more information. Sweeten this up just a bit. Why is my time and sales so much? That's better. Okay. Yeah. See this reversal? 219.37 was exactly the turnaround.
Nice.
Which is interesting, actually. The volume is still pretty weak as far as this goes. There's a huge volume on this recovery, which means the bulls are kind of pulling back on it. Do you want to talk about what the ADD meant then?
Yeah, ADD is a market internal.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that means is that it will gauge the actual stocks that make up the SPY, because SPY is made up of a whole bunch of stocks.
Right. The top 500 performing.
Yeah, and the top FANG stocks like Amazon, Netflix, all these stocks have a lot of control or influence over the SPY. And so
Right, because
Amazon,
they make up a huge portion of the cap, yeah.
Right. And so if Amazon goes up 10% of the day, you'll see that SPY will act accordingly. And you'll see that BA, for the Dow Jones, it can shave off a lot if it's doing badly, like it's recently been doing. And so what the market internal will show you, this ADD, it'll show you the strength of all the other stocks that are included in the SPY or the Dow Jones. And so that gives you a better indicator as to if the market's actually strong or not.
Do you know what makes up the ADD?
No, I don't.
I think I remember vaguely it being a volumetric thing. It's just like, or either the volume or the prices at where everything is bought at.
Mm-hmm.
So it always goes like this because there's highs and lows, and so I think it covers the lowest and the highest. But I don't recall. This option's not too great. You guys put on the WHO press report.
Do you have the chat open?
Yeah, I have it open. I'm just trying to think about what it is. Organization. Oh, you know what this is about? I'm dumb. Guess what this is about?
The coronavirus.
The coronavirus, yeah. Live. Oh shit. Okay, yeah. Do you know why this is important?
Yeah, because it's like the spy.
Yeah, because if this is because they're gonna declare whether or not it's an emergency, and if it is, then that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, they already said on a notice that they're looking for a cure and all that stuff.
There's a company that started looking for a cure.
Yeah.
There's a company that started looking for the cure. This is not valuable as of right now, but there's a company that started looking for the cure. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was Norovex. But let me go back and look. Norovex. And no. NVAX, yeah. So it was. So they had a huge spike up over the last few days. NVAX. Right there. They are the ones who are looking for, who are, I think have something about a cure for the coronavirus. Let me figure it out. They're making the drug for the coronavirus. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to play this either, but they moved some 100%, I think. Because what? They closed out, I think slightly before the news came out. It was here. 392. Yeah, it moved like, 150% or something like that.
Jeez.
So, yeah, still pretty sketchy though. Not a huge fan of it. It is holding though, for the time being. Look at Facebook, see what's Facebook doing. Yeah, it bounced right off 37. VA strong volume. Oh shit, Jesus. Hey, look at BA. BA's bouncing off these tops that you said.
Oh, nice.
Pushed up, volume's high. Where can you go? So,
320.
oh wait.
Yeah,
Into the
320.
earnings. Now I have to do like a mental analysis of PA again. We should open the Bloomberg when we get a chance. Not now. I have to call H.
Oh, damn, dude.
What's up?
Netflix, this call went
Mhm.
from 14 cents to $1.60. But right now it's sitting
Which
at
call?
$1.
Or at least.
This is the very far out 355 call for this week.
Okay. The 355 call this week went from where to where?
Went from around 10 to 14 cents
Mm-hmm.
to $1.65.
You know what's so frustrating? I was literally looking to buy it.
Yeah.
Because remember I made that video, like my previous video about how I thought Netflix was going to fill that gap regardless of how the report went. I mean, the report went well, but it still went up.
Actually get spreads for that.
I was trying to get spreads. I was trying to get a 20-cent
Like
spread.
right now, even. Like for next week.
How much farther? Because I
like within the,
fundamentally,
because it's at the top right now, so it makes sense
gap.
after earnings, it's going to continue into that.
Into the gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's back in the gap, so it can go up to 362, right?
Right. You want to look at
Yeah. Let's look at the spreads then. Maybe I should. I kind of want to look at just the naked positions as well. Yeah, they're very expensive. So
360 is $2.
360 for February 20th or
geez.
February 14th is about $400 or $500.
Well, yeah.
But
let's do 2 weeks out, right? So that's February. Look at February 7th instead.
I wouldn't have a problem putting 200 into just buying Netflix for that.
360 is a
385.
But if you get a spread there using 200 like you wanted to,
yeah, we can do
you
that.
can do like $50 $4 of them, right?
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad because the spread between these two is
Not much actually.
Actually, hold on. Let me make sure that
like
I'm right, because it is kind of high. Because if you think
they're
about
about $1, and they're right.
they're
They're $40.
$2 off, but they're
Yeah.
actually no, that's not too bad at all. Because even if you're going, so these are away by 15, so 60, and so these hit about $2. So if it hits, that's a very low amount to bet against that. Okay, so let's do that right now. Let's do that right now then.
Okay.
Here, give me that computer, and I'll start opening up the spreads. So because we can't do this. So okay, like I think I've covered in a different video that we have several other accounts. So we have a Robinhood account on, because it's not written under the name that it is, I don't think.
Okay.
We have several different accounts, so we're gonna open up a position. Yeah, here it is. On one of those accounts right now. What we're gonna be doing is we're buying I'm gonna look at the option spread and take a look at it, figure out what is good for it right now. Rip. Only at 2,000.
Yeah.
What was this?
I traded.
Okay.
That 100. Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember this. January 21st. Oh, was this the other day?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you trade for this one?
That was the BA.
This was BA?
Yeah.
I don't remember this. Whatever. Let me think. I'm looking at Netflix. I will be right back. Like, I'm hoping that didn't go through. That'd be fucking terrible. Okay, so what we're looking at right now is we're looking at Netflix. I will probably write this up in like, tonight's video if I make one.
Take photos.
Yeah, I can actually take videos and
Screenshots
photos
and
and
put it
just
in there.
send them out.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be too hard. Find a way to connect it to all of them.
Also, we shouldn't buy all 4 at the same time. We should buy like 2 right now, and if it actually breaks, then we scale in.
Was I gonna buy 4? Oh yeah, $200 worth. Yeah,
to,
I'm
like,
waiting.
spend
I'm waiting
200.
on it. Yeah. So, because it's gonna go down some probably.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the calls. We're looking at. So the spread between the 62s and the 60s is what I kind of like because it's only about $50. We could buy 4 of those at that rate. Or
so
we could,
you're about. So the profit target there is what, 250, and there's already 50 there,
yeah.
so 200.
So because once you get in the money in that week, which week is this by the way? 7th. So the in the money spreads are a little bit over 100. So.
And I realized actually, if you were, what a new strategy could be actually is this. So
it's probably better if I get the 60s, right? Or this one, because the spread is roughly the spread here is 50, the spread here is 60, but this one is more deeper in the money, so I should probably go with this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's for 10 cents.
10 cents. Yeah. Okay, go on.
So how options work when they are on the expiration date is that they reach the value that they're worth, essentially.
If they're in the money.
If they're in the money. So if $100 call is in the money for whatever, for let's say stock ABC, then the option will be worth $100 in that way, because you'll be paying. You won't get, when it expires on that day and it's in the money, you'll pay the premium that is exactly the amount of the actual stock times 100, right?
Right.
because you can't make it. You're not going to make profit if you just, or this is just to nullify your ability to make profits on that stock. Because the idea is you get the contract, you get it for 100 shares, and then you sell it right back for an immediate profit. That's how these options usually work. And so what you can do is reverse the strategy of, you know, buying a credit spread on a Thursday. Instead of doing that, instead of getting credit and you think something is going to go up, you get the debit spread on a Thursday. And since, like...
Oh, because it maxes out. You're like frogging a debit spread.
Exactly.
Does
So
it
in
work,
this
though?
case...
Does it actually reach? Because I actually never noticed this.
It does reach.
So it reaches the exact...
Exactly.
Like it's fixed.
It's pretty much fixed. The difference will always be fixed, is what I'm saying. Because it's a debit spread.
Oh,
and so,
fuck. I know what you're talking about.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, that makes... Okay. This is actually a brilliant plan. So...
so that's why you let it go to expiration, if you're just at least in the money.
So
right?
wouldn't it be smarter to buy a debit spread then if you could get one for cheap?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this. So what we're looking at is we're buying the... So I'll say this once, maybe I'll write it down somewhere so people can see it. There's not that many people watching this video, so it doesn't matter. So what we're doing is let me make sure I got this right. We are buying for the strike price date is February 7th. Yeah, February 7th. We're buying the 357.5 for $4.23. And we're selling the 360 call for $3.65. The net is about 55 cost as far as the debit is concerned. And so we're going to spend $55 on this credit spread. And if it hits in the money at the time of expiration, well, the difference between these is $250. Right. So if it hits that, it'll multiply by about 400% or so if it hits, right? And so that is the potential for this. And we will scale into this position as time goes.
When you're looking at this, see if it hits, it's probably going to get... Oh, it's going to get rejected by this, essentially. Maybe.
Yeah, it could, but it doesn't matter if it gets close. We can close out the position at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Let's probably do that instead. I mean, you get the debit, but then you close it right when it hits it, because it's not just going to stay there for a little bit.
Right.
And maybe get it again before expiration if it
We're
has
filled.
potential.
Wow, that was so easy. I've never been filled so quickly. Yeah, it was so easy.
New broker, Robinhood. Did you have trouble this morning?
No.
Or did you? Yeah.
Not really.
Trade this morning?
I didn't really get a chance to trade that much today.
Okay.
So no, I did not trade.
Okay.
I apologize. No, I didn't get a chance to. I was busy rearranging.
No,
stuff,
yeah.
So.
No, because like I was wondering if you experienced.
I know. I actually tried to sell it to see if I could.
Okay,
but
so it didn't go through.
It didn't go through, but the volume was really low, so it was being traded. I don't know.
See, actually, the problem I've been having.
Yeah.
With TD is that I can get into a trade, right?
But you can't get out.
But I can't get out. Like I put my limit order right where the buyers were, and I still didn't get filled.
Really?
And I went even lower, and I still didn't get filled. And then I went to this market chain right here, over here, and I actually went to the option. You know, it'll be green if you're in it.
You sold it at the bid.
And I sold it at the market order because I had to.
Do you think they're lowering the bid prices, or they're lowering the fill prices to compensate and taking some of the change in between, kind of how Robinhood does it?
Yeah.
But Robinhood does it in a non-shady way. They just take it out of your... Every time you complete, they just take like 2 cents out.
Oh,
but
yeah.
These guys are stealing off the bid, I feel like.
Yeah. I don't know how they do that.
I mean, so... That's kind of stupid. That's a really dumb implementation if that's what they're doing. So, for example, if it costs... Like, if you're trying to sell the $8.55 and the spread... God, this spread is fucking massive. Oh, whoops, I'm blind. That's still pretty big. 20-cent spread.
Yeah. So I did have to sell it.
So you say it's being sold. Saying the meeting is at 8:40, and so it's 8:45, 8:25. So if you're selling it at the ask of the bid.
Oh, you're selling it at the
bid,
app.
right? At the bid.
At the bid, yeah.
Right.
Bid.
So
yeah.
If you're selling it at the bid. That makes sense if there's low volume, but if there's like regular volume and it's in the mark,
checked. Yeah.
If the mark is higher and you're having to sell below that amount, then that might be a concern. Yeah. So that's just something that's concerning. So we're in it now, so that's cool. What position are we in again? So
Maybe we should have timed it. Where's Netflix right now?
Netflix.
Yeah. So
I mean, I anticipate it'll come
this
down.
looks similar to something like Tesla before it hit like 550.
Mm-hmm.
Right before that.
This looks like such a rejection, but it also already pulled back from it, so I don't really mind.
Yeah.
As long as it can hold above 342, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna really lose value on the
341,
option
Yeah.
for now. So as long as it can stay up there, if it starts coming down, which it totally could do, we could probably day trade this reversal though, which is a shitty time to actually buy. But
yeah.
But I mean that doesn't really matter because we're playing long. So the most we're gonna lose is like 10, 15 on the spread, which is actually a lot cheaper because if it recovers that,
Yeah, exactly.
10, 15 on a becomes
60?
60. So it's 55. So it becomes 40.
40.
So 40 to 55 is a pretty huge
Yeah,
jump.
that's
It's like 30%.
yeah.
So
15 of 55. Yeah.
that's not bad. Alright, I am
1, 2, 3.
gonna change this.
Yeah, 15 of 55 is above 25%. So about 30%.
30%.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna change the style on this because I don't like it. Much better.
Which stuff?
I don't like the style. I don't like the unfilled candles. They bother me. At the very least, they should be filled. I don't know why they wouldn't inherently.
Disney is just not doing anything.
Are we in it? We're put, sorry.
No, we're in calls.
Ah, lovely.
Yeah, we're in calls at this spot right here.
Which spot?
We got in right here.
What a terrible timing.
Yeah.
Actually, but then again, I still might roll those.
1, 2.
Those are spreads.
It's still in this channel, man.
I know.
It had a bad day today.
So, yeah, it had a really bad day today. But it's holding as of now. It's cheap, though. It's like worth nothing almost because it's this week.
Yeah.
Into earnings, they're not doing well. But their earnings report's going to be pretty good.
So, I think Jay did like, he bought a lot of a certain stock into earnings to let the premium jump.
Yeah.
Do you know which stock that was? Was it Intel?
Say it one more time.
Like Jay bought not stocks, sorry, 2 options or a set of options 2 weeks out from now, doing it past earnings, but it was still cheap now. But he's anticipating it to sell it back for the premium jump because of the implied volatility.
I don't recall what stock that was actually. Let me go back and see.
Ooh, Nvidia is looking very good. Take a look at Nvidia right now.
In intraday or daily?
Both. Intraday right now, but
Okay. Looks like a turnaround.
yeah.
Yeah?
It just look at the daily now. I mean the intraday. Yeah. It just crossed the
volume.
high.
Wow, what the hell?
It's going.
The volume is really fucking high.
Okay. Interesting. It has to be 253.50, so $1 for now.
I would take this actually. It's kind of good.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty good setup.
Is the whole market coming up right now?
Ooh, oh yeah, SPY is. That's why. SPY is boosting up. Oh, huge volume. Is it the World Health?
Oh, it is. Let me open that up.
No, the flip.
Live coverage. No, it's fucking not then.
There's huge volume in SPY.
What's the volume?
10s to 11s.
Yeah, the whole market's doing it. Is Netflix too? If Netflix, look for the
Oh
independents
my god,
right now.
dude.
Look for the independents
Dude,
right
it's
now.
in California.
What?
California girl, Alaya, hospitalized with a strain of coronavirus.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Fuck. That's not good.
Is it a little girl?
I don't know. To check. Aaliyah Cardoza. Oh, it's a little girl. It's a small one. It's 3 years old.
Damn, that's terrible.
Yeah. Oof.
Oh, hold on. Where did you get that report from?
Go on TD. It's on their news.
Why did I type news into Google?
Aaliyah Cardoza.
I'm sure I'll find it.
Cardoza.
Aaliyah Cardoza.
Yeah. Aliyah.
Aliyah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aliyah. Still trying to get used to this keyboard. There we go.
Yeah.
That's
it's falling.
such a everything is. Was admitted to children's hospital with flu-like symptoms died around the coronavirus as well as the microplastics. She had a fever and a cough and it was escalated because the fever was breaking. Test determined taught and 11/68 Eastern. Fuck, it's killed 17 people already, by the way. This has been like 3 days.
And China has
Singapore
raised
now
their
too as well. Apparently the World Health Organization is not declaring it an emergency, which doesn't make sense because it's spreading really fast.
Yeah, the case rose to 639 in China. 639 people.
639 cases?
Yeah, in China.
Jesus Christ.
But apparently they're saying that people in China have gotten over this.
Really?
Yes. So they should take...
What do you mean they got over it?
They literally, I was reading an article, they didn't go through any specific treatment, but they had
recovered?
Yeah, they had recovered from it. So...
What has been happening a little bit?
New news. World WHO Emergency Committee says that corona is a bit too early to consider this a public health emergency of international concern. That was the rip.
Did the rip hold? Yeah, it's holding. All-time highs again. Yeah. 330. Ah, no, it's not all-time highs. Whoops. Yeah, we're kind of off right now. This is weird. The California thing is a problem.
Yeah, because what? It was found in Washington, right?
I thought...
Something like that?
She was in California, right?
Yeah, she was in California. So they're...
I thought there were no cases in America.
No, there was. That's why it went down.
But now they're... Okay. Cool, I'm not trying to die.
Well, we do have an international airport.
In Texas? And California?
Yeah, they're screening specific airports, and one of them is California for any...
Okay.
But that didn't help, obviously.
Yeah. LAX, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely LAX.
Mm-hmm.
How's the virus spreading?
It's airborne now.
Oh, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's fucking terrible.
So they all kind of look the same right now, except for Baba. Baba like reacting.
Yeah. Check his chat. Baba is apparently just reacting weirdly.
Oh, nice. Well, Baba is China, I guess. So.
True.
But this thing is like gapping down. Earnings on 29th. Yeah. There's a lot of ones next week.
Yeah. Okay. Back to Facebook. Still holding? Yeah, they fully recovered from that.
SPY helped.
Yeah, SPY carried this boy. Alright, well, my interest is now in a continuation of the banks because the banks have reported. JPM, Wells Fargo, I think, has also. But JPM and Bank of America both have reported. And so, right here. So they beat. No, they lost fucking badly. Wells Fargo really did not do well. But Bank of America and JP Morgan did beat. They beat, this estimated was 70. And they got 74, but they're all coming down anyway. So I think, actually, if we start seeing a market turnaround, I think the banks are going to be the ones that lead it. We already have injected in the 75 billion the repo, right? That's already in.
Yeah.
Or it's in the process of being injected currently.
Process.
Okay. I think taking on the short side of JP Morgan is a pretty good idea. Or not JP Morgan per se, but like banks in general.
Banks. Yeah.
Do you remember what that thing was that I said yesterday that we should do? There was a stock that I was talking about that I had like an entire plan ready for.
Disney.
Was it
Yeah.
Disney?
We talked about this.
I think it was Disney. I don't remember. So let me actually get it on video this time. So my concern or my thinking was the move from this earnings report was kind of what drove us up to all-time highs.
Where is this point? Is that right there?
Yes.
Oh,
it
it's
is.
okay.
So I think 140 and 140 was a big thing I think
Yeah.
for us earlier too.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to look
Interesting.
at it.
Yeah.
So if I take a
If
look.
there's any spot to break this channel thing, it's there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking, so not here obviously, but 140 right there is a pretty good area. So, but my contention is that I think around 140 we're probably going to see a bounce, and it might be a big one because of the way the volume has been holding up against all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. I think that it's possible because it didn't react to SPY just now, did it? What was the times? 10. I guess
Around
10:24.
10:24. Yeah.
10:24. Okay, so that was
SPY.
reaction to SPY. I think Disney might actually start coming back up. Also, I'm curious about Tesla right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So.
Holy shit. Okay, so I was actually looking as this morning when I saw it, when it bounced off this line here.
Yeah. Did you see this?
Yeah, I was trying to get in.
Oh my god.
And you know,
Crazy.
yeah, it was huge. It was a big move, and now the full downtrend is what kind of getting me right now. It's a lot.
Yeah, this thing usually.
Oh, you know why Netflix is kind of going up right now?
Why? 567.
Comcast posted very big video loss.
Oh, on their earnings?
Mm-hmm. I don't know what's the ticker for Comcast.
Jeez. Probably.
Is CVCL. No, that's not it. These are fucking weird. I don't know what they are.
Cast.
She's in a Bloomberg. Honestly, now we could open up the
Oh,
Bloomberg. Now that we have the
CMCSA.
screens.
Did you see that?
CMSA?
Yeah, that one?
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
remember it being shorter.
CMCSA.
CMC.
Uh,
Yeah, it is. GLD. Yeah, the lower
47.
alerts. Dollar GLD, GILD assesses Ebola drug as coronavirus treatment. Stock pop.
GILD. Whoa. Okay. Kind of.
Why did I say dollar?
It's at a good spot though with
Holy
the bounce.
what the
If you look
fuck?
at the daily.
For the gold? For GILD?
Yeah, look at this. Look at the spot.
Oh yeah, what the hell? How
yeah,
did it
just
off?
look at the general term. You see that?
How did
It's
it
just
off?
like UAL.
It is.
Actually.
It's a lot like UIL.
Yeah.
Let me go back. Yeah, this is very much that. It's not even, the stock isn't even that sketchy. What's the market cap on this thing? I don't get any of the fundamental information straight out, so it's kind of annoying. I'll take a look though. GILD. It's Gilead Sciences. They have a market capitalization of, wow, they're fucking huge. How have I never heard of this company?
They're announcing I don't know.
$80.25 million market cap.
What?
Yeah, it's huge.
Jesus.
For like a bioscience for a bio company, it's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
Like, because biopharm companies don't usually have that much of a market cap. I'm trying to remember. Do you remember Arcadia?
Yeah, I remember.
Arcadia's market cap wasn't even that big. Yeah, it was like 44
What
million.
are they at now?
The
400,000.
Yeah. Do you remember that small term when I caught it on the thing? Do you remember that small term spike when it hit like 50, and it was like $5 to 50? My biggest regret when I was like, wow, was that 1,000? That was a 10 bagger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first. I was like, this is the first time I saw a 10 bagger. But it was on a stock, so I was like, wow.
Yeah, we kept on like theorizing if we put 10K in there, then we would.
I was trying to put in some, which was a mistake on my. I mean, it would have been dumb though. Like, I wouldn't have known why I really made, because I was gonna put in like 300.
Yeah.
And I would have turned it into 3,000, and
yeah.
I wouldn't have really known why. So I guess I'm fine with not having ever done it, but because I probably would have lost at 3K at the time at least. Anyway. GLD is interesting. The options are good, so I think we could actually consider opening up a position here.
Yeah.
I like it. There's not enough cases for them to start making money all of a sudden, but I mean, no, if they're making money already, it doesn't matter. But yeah.
Net change bid. So the bid and ask they aren't fucked yet.
On what, GLD?
Yeah.
They're probably not enough people know because
because TD doesn't even show you yet. I think someone else got the information really quickly, maybe.
Yeah.
On the Bloomberg or something.
I need access to the Bloomberg again. So I guess we can tell H to log in and like have it up on one screen. We can have it on this screen, I guess.
Doesn't he go to like? He doesn't have his own computer for it, does he?
He doesn't. No. You got it because you have to pay for the 25K for the for the service fee. But he doesn't need to.
Oh, look at Tesla.
Intra.
Yeah, intra. Ooh, this is good. You see that?
The rejection. I might not have the same line as you, so if you're seeing it, I'm seeing it.
Just like the break of a trend.
Oh yeah, because this is a channel, right?
Yeah, this is a channel downwards, but this is my line. This 568 level.
That was just a terrible line on my part. The 568 level?
Yeah, this beginning of the day, it broke here and made that huge rip up.
Yeah.
Now it went below that, and now it's
if it's above right here, right?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like
this top market right here, yeah. It's kind of taking support above it. So you have to, for this to work out, you might have to be 568.82. So take a look at that as the level.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and edit these.
Yeah, exactly. That level above that would probably be a good market break.
I agree.
Or trend breaker. Yeah, just like that. If you literally put a line down here, boom, 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 boom.
Where?
Here.
Oh shit! Yeah, here, let me do that. I feel like I should have these defaulting. It's already breaking out of that trend.
Yeah.
Well, watch it pull back to it.
Yeah, and also keeping track of this bottom right here. Oh, this bottom matches that top. Nice. Okay. I'm gonna remove this.
Remember how many lines David would have on his?
Too many. And he never deleted them.
That was the part that got me.
Yeah.
I was like, why? Wouldn't you delete them?
Oh, this looks way cleaner. I'm gonna maximize this.
Which one?
This looks like a way cleaner line. Do you see that?
Oh yeah. What is that? 566, 69?
67.5. Yeah.
Okay.
But above that 568 level that you said is really good. Oh, I didn't even show you the full. Yeah, here it is. Boom, boom.
Oh, that's like a direct connect right there. So we maybe consider breaking that into the. That's a day trade though.
Yeah.
Let me see if I get the right extension. Yeah, I do. Okay, cool. I have enabled right extension, so now I can draw these lines as I see fit. Okay, there we go. Okay, where's that other line that you have? It was here, right? The one that you were talking about?
Oh, yeah, it's
Let me draw it
the
on
bottom. Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah, the bottom of it there.
Yeah, I see. Oh, wow, that's really good, actually.
But I'm trying to see.
I'm trying to see the volume. The volume's picking up a little, but not above average.
It's 12:41. That's pretty important. Around. Usually things ramp up 20 minutes, 30 minutes before 1.
Before 1 o'clock?
Yeah.
Then keep an eye on it, I suppose.
Yeah.
We've been streaming for about 50 minutes.
Oh, nice.
This is helpful, actually. Keeping this up. No one's going to watch these older ones anyway. But as you start building an audience.
Yeah. They'll ask questions, we'll be probed.
Yeah.
Is the microphone off?
It's on.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty easy, actually.
Yeah.
You can just turn it off. You can just click mute. Just click it.
Hello? Nice.
As long as it's not blinking. So, it's blinking right now. Or it's not blinking right now, so we're good. Anywho. I don't
Every
see
dollar.
anything in particular.
See, with the way that this is going, you wouldn't get in at the breakout.
No, you wouldn't. Not
You-
especially with how this market trend is just going.
You'd get out of the downturn.
Which would suck so much.
This has been actually happening to me a lot lately. And I don't know if it's been these last 2 weeks, but every breakout,
Yeah.
I still did it with using my bounce strategy.
Yeah.
Because I know I
And
do
they're just
all the
not
bounces,
working?
but my bounces don't work anymore. It's literally the continuation of a trend every time.
Yeah, so watch for that because that's a market strategy that has to change now. So we haven't adjusted to the new market because we're in 2020 right now. And so the way that our strategies were working earlier, I think they're going to change. So I think you see that dump right there?
Mm-hmm. No, I was thinking, get in at the dump. Because it curls up.
Oh, because you're saying your bounces don't work, so do the opposite.
I'm saying maybe continue the trend, but also for these things, what's really screwed me is that my bounce had worked before.
Yeah.
But I had to go through that dip.
Man, this office looks so good now. I don't.
Yeah.
Alright, yeah, go on.
Yeah, but I couldn't handle the dip.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Like,
because you're
this has
initially
been happening.
pulled off, right?
Yeah.
Can't you just set like OCO brackets and stuff like that on options?
I've never used them.
You should try.
You done?
Trading?
Yeah.
No. I'm just
Marveling.
I'm just stepping back.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
This is pretty good.
I'm proud.
Pretty fucking good.
Come on, take a
Yo,
shot.
Spy is pulling up again.
It is?
Yeah.
Same thing. Trends.
Is
You see,
NVIDIA
this
doing it?
volatility is... Huh? I have NVIDIA up over
it's
there.
not. Apple is though.
What did we just buy?
Netflix.
Yeah.
Where's Netflix?
It's on the... Should be on that one up there.
Yeah.
It's coming out right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about how many more screens we could use. If we get a mounting
Are
bracket...
these all working?
Yeah, these all.
Oh my god, 3 more. Okay.
It's a lot, yeah. Because he brought, one? So we had 4 total that worked, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We had 3 total that worked.
So do one of these not work?
No, he brought this one, he used this one. So these 2 are ours, and then we also have this one.
Mm-hmm.
And that. Oh, so 4. What? 4.
Yeah, that's the part that's not making sense to me, is that... Because I only have 2 up here. These 2 big ones. So one of these don't work. I mean, this is the one that he brought, so...
Actually,
this one.
wait. Where's the...
Stickers?
Okay, so these 2 work.
Yeah.
That's good. But then we have another big one right here.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't recognize this one. I think he brought this one then. I think
No, he brought this one.
these
He brought this one because this one has a speaker. This one, I don't know. This one you bought.
2. Yeah, I brought one of these. I don't recognize.
You brought the little one.
Yeah.
I don't know what that one is.
I don't recognize this.
The little one worked though, so that's probably one that doesn't
Yeah.
work also, right?
No, this may be one that he brought.
Well, there was a total of what, 5?
5. Are there 2 here?
Yeah.
Yeah, then he brought 2 monitors instead of 1.
So 2 didn't work or 3 didn't work? How many monitors didn't work? 3 of them worked, you said.
Yeah, so 2 of them didn't work. So those 2 don't
So
work.
those 2 don't work.
These all work.
So they all work. Yeah, that's fine. That was fun. That my issue with
my
this.
God.
My issue with the current market trend. Yeah, I know. Apple.
Yeah, but this 320 level,
Yeah. It's big.
just above that.
We'll see how it behaves around 310.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll mimic it.
No break. 368. Tesla's going.
What if we just push the couch over here instead? Couch here. That would
Use
work.
that as our seats.
Yeah. You think that would work?
No.
It's too low, right?
Yeah. We sink in.
Let me see. Oh yeah, this is way too low.
Yeah.
I'll take a.
Can we pause the stream?
You-
Actually, no. It screws up the timing.
Yeah.
But we don't know what time you started. Actually, it'll show on the thing. Yeah, it'll all
But
show
what we
on the
could
thing.
do is I could just mute it and then just keep it on a chart.
Yeah,
You wanna do that then?
could.
Okay, so we're muting the oh shit, you know what? I'll just let this play. It already played. We missed the whole thing. Okay, we'll move it on.
Where everything is just a few clicks away, buying a car should be no different. That's why at Carvana, you can buy a car 100% online. We made it easy to
all of our individual freedoms, because as the Supreme Court declared more than a century ago, voting is preservative of all rights.
Professor Carlin is right. Elections matter.
We don't have to hear.
They make our government legitimate, and they protect our freedom. A president who abuses his power in order to kneecap political opponents and spread Russian conspiracy theories, a president who uses his office to ask for, or even worse, to compel foreign nations to meddle in our elections, is a president who attacks the very foundation of our liberty. That is a grave abuse of power. It is an unprecedented betrayal of the national interest. It is a shocking corruption of the election process. And it is without doubt a crime against the Constitution, warranting, demanding removal from office. The framers expected that free elections would be the usual means of protecting our freedoms. But they knew that a president who sought foreign assistance in his campaign must be removed from office before he could steal the next election. In a last-ditch legal defense of their client, the president's lawyers argue that impeachment and removal are subject to statutory crimes or to offenses against established law, that the president cannot be impeached because he has not committed a crime. This view is completely wrong. It has no support in constitutional text and structure, original meaning, congressional precedents, common sense, or the consensus of credible experts. In other words, it conflicts with every relevant consideration. Professor Gerhardt succinctly captured the consensus view in his testimony.
Professor Gerhardt, does a high crime and misdemeanor require an actual statutory crime?
No, it plainly does not. Everything we know about the history of impeachment reinforces the conclusion that impeachable offenses do not have to be crimes, and again, not all crimes are impeachable offenses. We look at, again, at the context and gravity of the misconduct.
This position was echoed by the Republicans' expert witness, Professor Turley, in his written testimony. There he stated that it, quote, "It is possible to establish a case for impeachment based on a non-criminal allegation of abuse of power." He also stated, "It is clear that high crimes and misdemeanors can encompass non-criminal conduct." More recently, Professor Turley, again the Republican witness at our hearing, wrote an opinion piece in the Washington Post entitled, "Where the Trump Defense Goes Too Far." In this piece, he stated that the president's argument is as politically unwise as it is constitutionally short-sighted. He added, if successful, it would also come at a considerable cost for the Constitution. Although I disagree with Professor Turley on many, many issues, here he is clearly right. And I might say the same thing of then House Manager Lindsey Graham, who in President Clinton's trial flatly rejected the notion that impeachable offenses are limited to violations of established law. Here is what he said.
What's a high crime? How about if an important person hurts somebody of low means? It's not very scholarly, but I think it's the truth. I think that's what they meant by high crimes. Doesn't even have to be a crime. It's just when you start using your office and you're acting in a way that hurts people, you've committed a high crime.
There are many reasons why high crimes and misdemeanors are not and cannot be limited to violations of the criminal code. We address them at length in the briefs we have filed and the report of the House Judiciary Committee respecting these articles of impeachment. But I would like to highlight a few especially important considerations. I'll tick through them quickly. First, there is the matter of the historical record. The framers could not have meant to limit impeachment to statutory crimes. Presidents are to be impeached and removed from office for treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. But bribery was not made a statutory crime until 1837. Second, the President's position is contradicted by the Constitution's text. The framers repeatedly referred to crimes, offenses, and punishment elsewhere in the Constitution. But here they refer to high crimes. That matters. It matters because the phrase high crimes refers to offenses against the state rather than to workaday crimes. And it matters because the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors had a rich history in England where it had been applied in many, many cases that did not involve crimes under British law. When the framers added high crimes here, but nowhere else in the Constitution, they made a deliberate choice. Any doubt on that score is dispelled by the framers' own statements. In Federalist Number 65, Alexander Hamilton explained that
In an era of online retail where everything is just a few clicks away, buying a car should be no different.
impeachments and offenses and offenders impeachable come not within the sphere of ordinary jurisprudence. They are founded on different principles, are governed by different maxims, and are directed to different objects. George Mason expressed concern that the President might abuse the pardon power to, quote, screen from punishment those whom he had secretly instigated to commit a crime, and thereby prevent a discovery of his own guilt. Sound familiar? James Madison responded directly to Mason's concern because Mason's concern was that the pardon power might be too broad. The President might misuse his broad pardon power to pardon his own co-conspirators and prevent the discovery of his own guilt. Madison responded, if the President be connected in any suspicious manner with any person, and there be grounds to believe he will shelter him, the House of Representatives can impeach him. They can remove him if found guilty. At the North Carolina
but patients can do well with intensive supportive therapy. So we need to focus on early diagnostics, early supportive care, intensive care where needed, and ensuring that the burden of cases within the system, and we've seen this with other diseases like dengue and cholera and in the past, the system itself, the health system may come under pressure as many worried well and people who think they have the disease come. So we need to also manage the pressure on the health system so the system can continue to function and triage patients appropriately. But I think we do need to, at this point, just be a little careful on making any pronouncements regarding the true case fatality associated with this disease. Thank you.
We will take a last question from our colleagues. We can just introduce ourselves. I'm really sorry to everyone else, but all of our speakers have other things to do. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Andreas Schopp from RTL Germany. There are reports that the virus originated from snakes. Do you have any conclusion about that? What can you tell us about that? Thank you very much.
The investigation is going on, but so far no conclusive evidence, actually. Well, with that, we will have to conclude. Thanks to everyone here in Geneva, and thanks to everyone who was watching us on our social media platform and who dialed in. The statement has been sent to you electronically. We will have audio file. We will have a transcript. Don't hesitate to contact us if you have more questions on this topic. Wish you a very nice day or evening or morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much again for bearing with us. Thank you.
Or allegations that did not charge a violation of criminal law. Indeed, the Senate has convicted and removed multiple judges on non-criminal grounds. Judge Archibald was removed in 1912 for non-criminal speculation in coal properties. Judge Ritter was removed in 1936 for the non-criminal offense of bringing his court into scandal and disrepute. During Judge Ritter's case, one of my predecessors as chairman of the House Judiciary Committee stated expressly, "We do not assume the responsibility of proving that the respondent is guilty of a crime, as that term is known to criminal jurisprudence." What is true for judges is also true for presidents, at least on this point. The House Judiciary Committee approved 3 articles of impeachment against President Nixon. Each of them encompassed many acts that did not violate federal law. One of the articles, obstruction of Congress, involved no allegations of any legal violation. And it is worth reflecting on why President Nixon was forced to resign. Most Americans are familiar with the story. The House Judiciary Committee approved articles of impeachment in July 1974. Those articles passed with bipartisan support, although most Republicans stood by President Nixon. Then the smoking tape came out. Within a week, almost everyone who supported the president a week before changed his position, and the president was forced to resign because of what was revealed on the smoking gun tape. Within a week, Senator Goldwater and others from the Senate went to the president and said, "You won't have a single vote in the Senate. You must resign or you will be removed from office," because of the evidence on the smoking gun tape. But what was on the smoking gun tape? The smoking gun tape were recordings of President Nixon instructing White House officials to pressure the CIA and the FBI to end the Watergate investigation. No law explicitly prohibited that conversation. It was not in that sense a crime. But President Nixon had abused his power. He had tried to use 2 government agencies, the FBI and the CIA, for his personal benefit. His impeachment and removal was certain, and he announced his resignation within days. Decades later, in President Clinton's case, the Judiciary Committee reported on the articles of impeachment stated, "The actions of President Clinton do not have to rise to the level of violating the federal statute regarding obstruction of justice in order to justify impeachment." There is thus overwhelming authority against restricting impeachments to violations of established or statutory law. Every relevant principle of constitutional law compels that result. So does common sense. Impeachment is not a punishment for crimes. Impeachment exists to address threats to the political system, applies only to political officials, and responds not by imprisonment or fines, but only by stripping political power. It would make no sense to say that a president who engages in horrific abuses must be allowed to remain in office unless Congress had anticipated his or her specific conduct in advance and written a statute expressly outlawing it. For one thing, that would be practically impossible. As Justice Story observed, the threats posed by presidential abuse are of so various and complex a character that it would be almost absurd to attempt a comprehensive list. The Constitution is not a suicide pact. It does not leave us stuck with presidents who abuse their power in unforeseen ways that threaten our security and democracy. Until recently, it did not occur to me that our president would call a foreign leader and demand a sham investigation meant to kneecap his political opponents, all in exchange for releasing vital military aid that the president was already required by law to provide. No one anticipated that a president would stoop to this misconduct, and Congress has passed no specific law to make this behavior a crime. Yet this is precisely the kind of abuse that the framers had in mind when they wrote the impeachment clause. And when they charged Congress with determining when the president's conduct was so clearly wrong, so definitely beyond the pale, so threatening to the constitutional order as to require his removal. And that is why we are here today. You must judge for yourselves whether justice will be had for President Trump's crimes against our freedom and the Constitution. I will conclude by highlighting a few points that merit special emphasis as you apply the law of impeachment to President Trump's misconduct. First, impeachment is not for petty offenses. The president's conduct must constitute, as Masons put it, a great and dangerous offense against the nation, offenses that threaten the Constitution. Second, impeachable offenses involve wrongdoing that reveal the president as a continuing threat if he is allowed to remain in office. In other words, we fully recognize that impeachment does not exist for a mistake. It does not apply to acts that are merely unwise or unpopular. Impeachment is reserved for deliberate decisions by the president to embark on a course of conduct that betrays his oath of office and does violence to the Constitution. When the president has engaged in such conduct, and when there is strong evidence that he will do so again, when he has told us he'll do so again, when he has told us that it's okay to invite interference from a foreign power into our next election, the case for removal is at its peak. This is certainly the case when he invites, indeed attempts to compel, a foreign government to help him subvert the integrity of our next election. There can be no greater threat to the Republic. Finally, high crimes and misdemeanors involve conduct that is recognizably wrong to a reasonable, honorable citizen. The framers adopted a standard for impeachment that could stand the test of time. At the same time, the structure of the Constitution implies that impeachable offenses should not come as a surprise. Impeachment is aimed at presidents who act as if they are above the law, at presidents who believe their own interests are more important than those of the nation, and thus at presidents who ignore right and wrong in pursuit of their own gain. Abuse, betrayal, corruption. Here are each of the core offenses the framers feared most. The president's abuse of power, his betrayal of the national interest, and his corruption of our elections plainly qualify as great and dangerous offenses. President Trump has made clear in word and deed that he will persist in such conduct if he is not removed from power. He poses a continuing threat to our nation, to the integrity of our elections, to our democratic order. He must not remain in power one moment longer.
Mr. Chief Justice, Senators, President's Council, we will now walk through the President's abuse of power, the corrupt object of his scheme, his three official acts carrying out his scheme, his attempted cover-up and exposure, and the harm to our nation and continuing threat caused by his misconduct. Let's start first with the object of the President's scheme. And Senators, we have today provided handouts that you can follow along in our slides. So as this first slide indicates, in this portion of our presentation, we will discuss the evidence that shows overwhelmingly that President Trump directed this scheme with corrupt intent, with one corrupt objective: to obtain foreign assistance in his reelection bid in the 2020 United States presidential election. We will walk through first how the president wanted Ukraine to help in his reelection campaign. He wanted Ukraine to publicly announce 2 investigations, one into his political rival, Joe Biden, and the second into the debunked conspiracy theory related to Ukraine interference in the 2016 election. President Trump himself later confirmed this intent in public statements. We will then explain how we know these investigations were solely for President Trump's personal political gain. First, President Trump made clear he cared only about the announcement of the investigations, not the actual investigations. Second, President Trump similarly made clear he cared only about the big stuff, meaning his political investigations. Third, he used his personal attorney, Mr. Giuliani, who repeatedly told us he was pursuing the investigations in his capacity as the president's personal lawyer, and that this wasn't about foreign policy. Fourth and fifth, there is no real dispute that these investigations were never part of an official U.S. policy, and they, in fact, went outside official channels. The Department of Justice even publicly confirmed that they were never asked to talk to Ukraine about these investigations. Never. 6 multiple officials who knew what was going on repeatedly reported these concerns to supervisors and even the NSC legal advisors. 7th, Ukraine expressed concerns multiple times that these were political investigations and Ukraine didn't want to get involved in domestic U.S. politics. 8th, the White House tried to bury the call. 9th, President Trump himself told us he really wanted and cared about, in his own words, in many public statements. And finally, despite the President Council's attempts to justify his actions, the evidence makes clear that President Trump did not care about anti-corruption efforts in Ukraine. This was only about one thing: his political investigations. We are following along on the slide. Now, as I mentioned, the object of the president's scheme is clear: 2 investigations to help his political reelection. The Constitution grants the president broad authority to conduct U.S. foreign policy. He is our commander-in-chief and chief diplomat. When the President of the United States calls a foreign leader, a president's first and only objective should be to get foreign leaders to do what's best for the U.S. national interest, consistent with the faithful execution of his oath of office, and consistent with official U.S. policy. But on July 25, when President Trump called the president of Ukraine, President Trump did the opposite. Instead of following official U.S. talking points, instead of listening to his staff on what was important to our national interests, President Trump asked Ukraine for something that benefited only himself: his political investigations. And not only did these investigations diverge from U.S. national interests, as you'll hear, President Trump's actions harmed our national security. In putting himself above our country, he put our country at risk. And that is why his actions are so dangerous. Now let's take a moment and look carefully at the two investigations that President Trump sought from Ukraine, which are at the heart of the president's scheme, and how he stood to benefit politically from Ukraine's announcement of each. As you can see on the slide, the first investigation was, of course, of former Vice President Biden. Let's go straight to that July 25 telephone call again, where President Trump stated clearly each of these investigations he wanted. So let's start with Vice President Joe Biden and the removal of corrupt prosecutor in Ukraine. The first investigation related to former Vice President Joe Biden and the Ukrainian gas company Burisma Holdings, on whose board his son, Hunter Biden, used to sit. President Trump himself summarized the theory behind his request in broad strokes in his July 25 call with President Zelensky. Here's what he said. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that, so that whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into that, it sounds horrible to me. Now let's look carefully at the investigation President Trump was asking for and what it was based on. In short, President Trump asked for the investigation into Biden based on a made-up theory that no one agreed with. No one. We'll go into this in more detail, but at a high level, the allegation is that late in 2015, Biden pressured Ukraine to remove the then Prosecutor General, Viktor Shokin, by threatening to withhold approximately $1 billion in loan guarantees if he was not removed. According to this theory, Vice President Biden did this in order to help his son in a company called Burisma. Vice President Biden's son sat on the board of Burisma. As the theory goes, Vice President Biden tried to remove Ukraine's prosecutor, all to make sure the prosecutor wouldn't investigate that specific company, Burisma, because, again, his son was on the board. Then, senators, if that doesn't sound far-fetched and complicated to you, it should. So let's take this step by step and start from the beginning. In 2014, Vice President Biden's son, Hunter, joined the board of the Ukrainian natural gas firm Burisma Holdings. At the time, Burisma's owner, a Ukrainian oligarch and former government minister, was under investigation. In 2015, Viktor Shokin became Ukraine's Prosecutor General, a job similar to Attorney General in the United States. Although Shokin vowed to keep investigating Burisma amid an international push to root out corruption in Ukraine, he allowed the Burisma investigation to go dormant. Allowed it to go dormant. That is when he was removed. He was not actively investigating Burisma. He had let it go dormant. Moreover, Shokin was widely perceived as ineffective and corrupt. George Kent, the second most senior official at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv at the time, described Shokin as, quote, a typical Ukraine prosecutor who lived a lifestyle far in excess of his government salary, who never prosecuted anybody known for having committed a crime, and covered up crimes that were known to have been committed. In late 2015, Vice President Biden, who had assumed a significant role in U.S. policy toward Ukraine, publicly called for the removal of Mr. Shokin because of his failure to adequately combat corruption. But Vice President Biden wasn't alone. The European Union, our European allies, the International Monetary Fund, reformers inside Ukraine also wanted Mr. Shokin removed to reform the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office, to reform it. Reforming the Prosecutor General's office was also supported on a bipartisan basis by the Ukrainian caucus here in the Senate. On February 12, 2016, after Vice President Biden had urged for the removal of Mr. Shokin, but before the Ukrainian parliament voted to remove him, a bipartisan group of senators, including Senators Portman, Durbin, Shaheen, Ron Johnson, Murphy, Kirk, Blumenthal, and Sherrod Brown, sent a letter to President Poroshenko that urged him to make urgent reforms to the Prosecutor General's office. The month after the senators sent that letter, Mr. Shokin was fired. He was fired. So let's be very, very clear. Vice President Biden called for the removal of this prosecutor at the official direction of U.S. policy because the prosecutor was widely perceived as corrupt. And with the support of all our international allies, his actions were therefore supported by the executive branch, Congress, and the international community. Common sense would tell us that this allegation against Joe Biden is false and that there was no legitimate basis for any investigation. But there are several other reasons. You know that the only reason President Trump wanted Ukraine to announce the investigation into Biden that was also solely for his very own personal benefit. So if you look at the slide, it'll summarize some points. First, none of the 17 witnesses in the House's inquiry said there was any factual basis for this allegation, not one of the 17. To the contrary, they testified it was false. Second, as I mentioned, the former Prosecutor General, Vice President Biden, was widely considered to be corrupt and failed to investigate corruption in Ukraine. Thus, removing him from office would only increase the chances that Burisma would be investigated for possible corruption. Third, because the prosecutor was so corrupt, Vice President Biden calling for his removal was also at the direction of official U.S. policy and undertaken with the unanimous support of our allies. Fourth, the successor to the fired Ukrainian Prosecutor General admitted that Vice President Biden's son didn't do anything wrong in connection with Burisma. So the entire premise of the investigation that the president wanted Ukraine to pursue was simply false. Finally, President Trump didn't care about any of this until 2019. But when Vice President Biden became the front runner for the Democratic presidential nomination, and polls showed that he had the largest head-to-head lead against President Trump, that became a problem. Let's start with the first and second points. Vice President Biden's conduct was uniformly validated by the witnesses in the House investigation who confirmed his conduct was consistent with U.S. policy. Every single witness who was asked about the allegations again said that Biden had nothing to do with it and it was false. They testified that he acted properly Every witness with knowledge of this issue testified that Vice President Biden was carrying out official U.S. policy in calling for Shokin's removal. Shokin was corrupt. And this witnesses explained the U.S. was not alone in this view. All of our European allies also supported this act.
5G is ready to roll out. The technology is already in place, so the clock is ticking.
How so? How does it influence you in the wrong way?
There's so much on social media. Like it just rubs you in every single way. So
you got one corner, the Oompa Loompas, then you got the hoes, and then you got the conspiracies, like all that type of stuff, or what?
No, I'm talking about like just like it's just politics and stuff like that. Like I got into your stream
not really
about 2 months ago now,
I think this impeachment trial is pretty interesting, so I'm just gonna keep it playing. But let me start back up again.
My understanding is the prosecutor general at the time, Shokin, was not at that time pursuing investigations of Burisma or the Bidens.
And in fact, removing that corrupt prosecutor general was part of the United States anti-corruption policy. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, and not just us, but all of our allies and other institutions that were involved in Ukraine at the time.
Ambassador Yovanovitch, too, confirmed these points. Let's watch her testify.
And in fact, when Vice President Biden acted to remove the former corrupt prosecutor in Ukraine, did he do so as part of official United States policy?
Official U.S. policy.
And that
was endorsed and was the policy of a number of other international stakeholders, other countries, other monetary institutions, financial institutions.
And similarly, when asked if there was any factual basis to support the allegations about Biden, George Kent replied, none whatsoever. Lieutenant Colonel Vidman and Ms. Williams also confirmed that they are not aware of any credible evidence to support the notion that Vice President Biden did anything wrong. And Ambassador Volker testified that the Biden allegations were not credible and that Biden, quote, respects his duties of higher office. Now, as I mentioned, there was also concrete reason that the U.S. government wanted Shokin removed. As David Holmes, a senior official at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, testified, by the time that Shokin was finally removed in 2016, there were strong concerns that Shokin himself was corrupt and not investigating potential corruption in the country. In fact, part of the concern was that Shokin was not investigating Burisma. Under Shokin, the investigation into the owner of Burisma for earlier conduct had stalled and was dormant. That was part of the reason why the United States and other countries wanted to remove Shokin. Because of this, and as confirmed by witness testimony we will hear shortly, calling for Shokin's replacement would actually increase the chances that Burisma would be investigated. In other words, Shokin was corrupt and not investigating allegations against Burisma. So when Vice President Biden was calling for Shokin's removal and advocating for his replacement, it would actually increase chances of Burisma's investigation. Ambassador Yovanovitch made this point during her testimony. Let's listen.
And in fact, if he helped to remove a corrupt Ukrainian prosecutor general who was not prosecuting enough corruption, that would increase the chances that corrupt companies in Ukraine would be investigated. Isn't that right?
One would think so.
And that could include Burisma, right?
Yes.
President Trump and his allies have tried to justify President Trump's withholding of military aid and a White House meeting unless Ukraine announced the investigations he wanted. by saying it's the same thing Vice President did when he called for Ukraine to remove its corrupt prosecutor. It is not the same thing. As you've just heard, Vice President Biden followed official U.S. policy. He went through official channels to remove the prosecutor that was corrupt. And he did it with the support of our allies. That is the exact opposite of what President Trump did. He pushed Ukraine for an investigation that has no basis, that no one agreed with, that was not at all U.S. policy, and that only benefited him. George Kent addressed this very point during his testimony. Let's listen.
And Mr. Kent and Mr. Taylor, the defenders of the president's behavior have made a big deal out of the fact that Vice President Biden encouraged the Ukrainians to remove a corrupt former Ukrainian prosecutor, 2016, Mr. Shokin. And in fact, Senator Rand Paul on Sunday said, and I quote him, "They're impeaching the President Trump for exactly the same thing that Joe Biden did." Is that correct? Is what the president did in his phone call and what Joe Biden did in terms of Mr. Shokin, are those exactly the same things? And if not, how are they different?
I do not think they are the same things. What former Vice President Biden requested of former President of Ukraine, Poroshenko, was the removal of a corrupt prosecutor general, Viktor Shokin, who had undermined a program of assistance that we had spent, again, U.S. taxpayer money, to try to build an independent investigator unit to go after corrupt prosecutors. And there was a case called the Diamond Prosecutor case in which Shokin destroyed the entire ecosystem that we were trying to help create. The investigators, the judges who issued the warrants, the law enforcement that had warrants to do the wiretapping, everybody to protect his former driver who he'd made a prosecutor. That's what Joe Biden was asking, remove the corrupt prosecutor.
So Joe Biden was participating in an open effort, established whole of government effort to address corruption in Ukraine.
That is correct.
Great. So, Mr. Kent, as you look at this whole mess, Rudy Giuliani, President Trump, in your opinion, was this a comprehensive and whole of government effort to end corruption in Ukraine?
Referring to the requests in July?
Exactly.
I would not say so. No, sir.
In short, the allegations against Vice President Biden are groundless. And so there is no comparison, none at all, between what he did and the President Trump's abuse of power. Now, let's turn to the third point. Part of the allegation against former Vice President Biden is that he pushed for the corrupt Ukrainian prosecutor's removal in order to protect his son from the investigation. In fact, the president's claim about being concerned about corruption in Ukraine has recently emphasized this component of the theory, that the president wanted Ukraine to investigate Hunter Biden's work on the board of Burisma, not the former vice president. This, too, is false, simply false. You need look no further than the July 25 call and the president's own statements to see that the president wanted the Ukrainians to investigate Vice President Biden. Let's look again at what the president's call said. Quote, "The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. Whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me." The president was clearly asking President Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden. And what did the president say on the White House lawn on October 3rd? When he was asked about the Ukraine scheme, he said, quote, "Well, I think they should, if they were honest about it, you saw the film yesterday, they would start a major investigation into the Bidens It's a very simple answer. He said the Bidens, plural. Not one Biden, the Bidens. It's clear that the president wanted what he wanted from Ukraine, an investigation to smear his political rival. But even if the president wanted an investigation of Hunter Biden, there is no basis for that either. Now, how do you know? Well, Ukraine's former prosecutor general admitted that the allegation against Vice President Biden's son was plainly false. You can see it on the slide, his own words, plainly false. Then Ukrainian Prosecutor General Yuri Lutsenko recanted his earlier allegations and confirmed, quote, Biden was definitely not involved in any wrongdoing involving Burisma. So, even the Ukrainians believe that Biden's son did nothing wrong. The long and short of it is that there was no basis for the investigation that the president was pursuing and pushing. None. He was doing it only for his own political benefit. But let's look at one more important reason why it's clear that President Trump simply wanted a political benefit from Ukraine's announcement of this investigation and didn't care about the underlying conduct. The allegations against Vice President Biden were based on events that occurred in late 2015 and early 2016. They were all well publicized at the time, but as soon as President Trump took office, he increased military support to Ukraine in 2017 and the next year, 2018. But it wasn't until 2019, over 3 years after Vice President Biden called for Shokin's removal, 3 years after, that President Trump started pushing Ukraine to investigate that conduct. So what changed? What changed? Why did President Trump not care at all about Biden's request on the removal of Shokin the year after it happened in 2017 or the next year in 2018? Senators, you know what changed in 2019 when President Trump suddenly cared. It's that Biden got in the race. On April 25, Vice President Biden announced he would run for president in 2020. If President Trump was so concerned about this alleged corruption, why didn't he push Ukraine to investigate when he entered office in 2017? Or in 2018, after Biden gave public remarks about how he pressured Ukraine to remove Shokin? Why did President Trump instead wait until former Vice President Biden was campaigning for the Democratic nomination? Senators, it's obvious. Because President Trump wanted to hurt Vice President Biden's candidacy and help himself politically. He pushed for an investigation in 2019 because that's when it would be valuable to him, President Trump. He pushed for it when it started to become clear that Vice President Biden could beat him. And he had good reason to be concerned. Let's look at the slide about some polls. Throughout the scheme, polling had consistently shown the former vice president handily beating President Trump by significant margins in head-to-head matchups. The chart on the screen shows a Fox News polls emphasizing this point. The chart shows that from March through December, Vice President Biden had consistently led President Trump in national polls by significant margins. So beginning around March, Vice President Biden is beating the president in polls, even on Fox News. In April, Biden officially announces his candidacy. And then when the president gets worried. In May, the president's personal lawyer tells the press that he's planning to travel to Ukraine to urge newly elected President Zelensky to conduct the two investigations, one into Vice President Biden. You know what else happened in May? A Fox News poll showed Biden beating Trump by 11 points. This clearly did not go unnoticed. On May 9, the president's personal lawyer, Mr. Giuliani, said in an interview, and this is a quote, "I guarantee you Joe Biden will not get to Election Day without this being investigated." And by July, right before President Trump's call with President Zelensky, where he asked for the investigation into Biden, the Fox News poll showed Biden beating Trump by 10 points. And then, on July 25th, after years of not caring what Vice President did, does President Trump ask for an investigation in his formidable political rival in the 2020 election. Senators, looking at this timeline of events, it is not difficult to see why the investigation of the Bidens would be helpful to President Trump. The mere announcement of such an investigation would immediately tarnish the former vice president's reputation by embroiling him and his son in a foreign criminal investigation, even if the charges were never pursued, just the mere announcement. And if a foreign country announced a formal investigation into those allegations, it would give allegations against the Bidens an air of credibility and could carry through the election. The evidence is clear. Everyone knew, even Ukraine, that there was no merit to the allegation that Biden called for the removal of Shokin for any illegitimate reason. Biden asked for it because it was consistent with U.S. policy, because Shokin was corrupt and with the backing of our allies. Even President Trump knew there was no basis for this investigation. That is why for years after Shokin's removal, he continued to support Ukraine, never once raised the issue. It wasn't until Biden began beating him in the polls that he called for the investigation. The president asked Ukraine for this investigation for one reason and one reason only, because he knew it would be damaging to an opponent who was consistently beating him in the polls, and therefore it could help him get reelected in 2020. President Trump had the motive, he had the opportunity, and the means to commit this abuse of power. Now let's turn to the second investigation that President Trump wanted. What he wanted is a widely debunked conspiracy theory that Ukraine, rather than Russia, interfered in the 2016 U.S. election to benefit President Trump's opponent. As we will explain, the allegation that Ukraine interfered in the 2016 elections, just like the allegation that Biden improperly removed the Ukraine prosecutor, has absolutely no basis in fact. In fact, this theory ignored the unanimous conclusions of the U.S. Intelligence Agency, the Congressional Intelligence Committees, and Special Counsel Mueller, which found that Russia attacked our elections. It also went against the Senate Intelligence Committee report, which found no evidence supporting that Ukraine attacked our elections. Nor did any witness support the theory that Ukraine attacked our elections. Indeed, even President Trump's own advisors told him the claim was false. In fact, the one person who told President Trump his theory is true, who was it? You know it was our adversary, Russia, who had everything to gain by deflecting the blame from their attack on Ukraine. Let's look at what President Trump was actually suggesting Ukraine investigate. The theory is this: instead of listening to our entire intelligence community that concluded that Russia interfered in our 2016 election to assist Donald Trump, the new theory says it was Ukraine that interfered in the election to help Hillary Clinton and hurt Donald Trump. One aspect of this conspiracy theory was that the American cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, which had helped the DNC respond to Russia's cyber attack in 2016, moved a DNC server to Ukraine to prevent the FBI from examining it. Here's what President Trump said about this conspiracy theory during the July 25 call. Quote, I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people. The server, they say Ukraine has it. Once again, if this sounds far-fetched and crazy, it should, because it is. There is simply no factual basis to support this conspiracy theory. Let's walk through the concrete reasons why. First, as I mentioned, our entire U.S. intelligence community, the Senate Select Committees on Intelligence, and Special Counsel Mueller all unanimously found that Russia, not Ukraine, interfered in the 2016 elections. And Russia did it to help Donald Trump and hurt Hillary Clinton. Here's an example of that. This is a conclusion of the Director of National Intelligence report entitled Assessing Russian Activities and Intentions in Recent U.S. Elections. I'll quote a part in it. You can follow along the slide. We assess Russian President Vladimir Putin's ordered and influence campaign in 2016 aimed at U.S. presidential election. Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We further assess Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. We have high confidence in these judgments, end quote. Clear precedent for President-elect Trump. And here's a conclusion of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Quote, the committee found that the Russia-based Internet Research Agency sought to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election by harming Hillary Clinton's chances of success and supporting Donald Trump at the direction of the Kremlin. The committee found that the Russian government tasked and supported the IRA's interference in the 2016 U.S. elections, end quote. supporting Donald Trump at the direction of the Kremlin. That's what it said. And here's the special counsel's conclusion. The Mueller report in 2019, quote, as set forth in detail in this report, the special counsel's investigation established that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election principally through two operations. First, a Russia entity carried out a social media campaign that favored presidential candidate Donald J. Trump and disparaged presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Second, a Russian intelligence service conducted computer intrusion operations against entities, employees, and volunteers working on the Clinton campaign and then released stolen documents. On December 9, 2019, even President Trump's own FBI director, Christopher Wray, stated unequivocally that there is no evidence to support the theory that Ukraine interfered in our election in 2016. Here's a video of that interview. Let's watch.
It's all those threats.
Did the government of Ukraine directly interfere in the 2016 election on the scale that the Russians did?
We have no information that indicates that Ukraine interfered with the 2016 presidential election.
When you see politicians pushing this notion, are you concerned about that in terms of its impact on the American public?
Well, look, there's all kinds of people saying all kinds of things out there. I think it's important for the American people to be thoughtful consumers of information, to think about the sources of it, and to think about the support and predication for what they hear. And I think part of us being well protected against malign foreign influence is to build together an American public that's resilient, that has appropriate media literacy, and that takes its information with a grain of salt.
And Putin has been pushing this theory. And your message to him in terms of the American public?
Stop trying to interfere with our elections.
We recently heard from the president himself that he wanted the CrowdStrike portion of this whole conspiracy in the Ukraine investigated, and I'm hearing you say there's no evidence to support that, as far as you know.
As I said, we at the FBI have no information that would indicate that Ukraine tried to interfere in the 2016 presidential election.
Should the president?
You heard him. He said no information that would indicate that Ukraine tried to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. So to be really, really clear, there is no real dispute that Russia, not Ukraine, attacked our elections. But it's not just that there is no evidence to support this conspiracy theory, it's more dangerous than that. Because where did this theory come from? You guessed it. The Russians, Russia, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russian intelligence services perpetuated this false, debunked conspiracy theory. Now remember, there is no dispute among the intelligence community that Russia attacked our 2016 election. The Senate's own Intelligence Committee published a report telling us that as well. So it's no surprise that Russia wants to blame somebody else. In fact, President Trump even said that. President Putin is the one who told him it was Ukraine who interfered in our elections. In short, this theory that the Russians are promoting to interfere yet again in our democratic process and deflect blame from their own attacks against us. But what is so dangerous is that President Trump is helping them perpetuate this. Our own president is helping our adversary attack our processes and to help his own reelection. Dr. Hill, an expert on these matters, explains it in more detail as to why this is very concerning. Let's watch.
This relates to the second thing I want to communicate. Based on questions and statements I have heard, some of you on this committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country, and that perhaps, somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. This is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves. The unfortunate truth is that Russia was the foreign power that systematically attacked our democratic institutions in 2016. This is the public conclusion of our intelligence agencies, confirmed in bipartisan congressional reports. It is beyond dispute, even if some of the underlying details must remain classified. The impact of the successful 2016 Russian campaign remains evident today. Our nation is being torn apart. Truth is questioned. Our highly professional and expert career foreign service is being undermined. US support for Ukraine, which continues to face armed Russian aggression, has been politicized. The Russian government's goal is to weaken our country, to diminish America's global role, and to neutralize a perceived US threat to Russian interests.
Their goal is to weaken our country, to diminish America's global role, and to neutralize a perceived U.S. threat to Russian interests. That's why it's so dangerous. Because despite the lack of any evidence to support this debunked conspiracy theory, the unanimous conclusion of the intelligence community, Congress, Special Counsel Mueller, and the FBI to the contrary, President Trump continued to promote this fake conspiracy theory just because it would be beneficial and helpful to his own re-election campaign. Even President Trump's own senior advisors told him these allegations were false. Tom Bossert, President Trump's former Homeland Security advisor, stated publicly that the CrowdStrike theory had been debunked. Here's that interview. Let's watch.
It's not only a conspiracy theory, it is completely debunked. You know, I don't want to be glib about this matter, but last year, retired former Senator Judd Gregg wrote a piece in the Hill magazine saying the 3 ways or the 5 ways to impeach oneself. And the third way was to hire Rudy Giuliani. And at this point, I am deeply frustrated with what he and the legal team is doing and repeating that debunked theory to the president. It sticks in his mind when he hears it over and over again. And for clarity here, George, let me just again repeat that it has no validity. The United States government reached its conclusion on attributing to Russia the DNC hack in 2016 before it even communicated it to the FBI and long before the FBI ever knocked on the door at the DNC. So a server inside the DNC was not relevant to our determination to the attribution. It was made up front and beforehand. And so while servers can be important in some of the investigations that followed, it has nothing to do with the U.S. government's attribution of Russia for the DNC hack.
The theory has no validity. That's what he said. Dr. Hill, too, testified that White House officials, including Mr. Bossert and former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, spend a lot of time refuting the CrowdStrike conspiracy theory to President Trump. Let's hear it.
Now, Dr. Hill, is this a reference to this debunked conspiracy theory about Ukraine interference in the 2016 election that you discussed in your opening statement as well as with Chairman Schiff?
The reference to CrowdStrike and the server, yes, that's correct.
And it is your understanding that there is no basis for these allegations, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, isn't it also true that some of President Trump's most senior advisors had informed him that this theory of Ukraine interference in the 2016 election was false?
That's correct.
When she was asked, is it false, she said, that's correct. If Vladimir Putin's goals, as as Dr. Hill testified, were to deflect from Russia's systematic interference in our election and to drive a wedge between the United States and Ukraine, he has succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. The alternative narrative of Ukrainian interference on the 2016 election has now been picked up by the president's defenders and the conservative media. It has muddled the waters regarding Russia's own interference in our elections, efforts that remain ongoing, as we have learned this week from reporting that Russia hacked Burisma. If there were any doubt about how President Putin feels about the president's conduct, you need only look to Putin's own words. His statement on November 20 tells it all. Quote, "Thank God nobody is accusing us anymore of interfering in U.S. elections. Now they're accusing Ukraine." That's a short quotation from Putin, but it speaks volumes. Even though President Trump knew that there was no factual basis for the theory that it was Ukraine that interfered in the 2016 election rather than Russia, and knew that Russia was perpetuating this theory, he still wanted President Zelensky to pursue the investigation. Why? Because while Putin and Russia clearly stood to gain by promoting this conspiracy theory about Ukraine, so did Donald Trump. He knew it would be politically helpful to his 2020 election. An announcement of an investigation by Ukraine would have breathed new life into a debunked conspiracy theory that Ukrainian election interference was there in 2016, and it lended great credibility. It would have cast doubt on the conclusions of the Intelligence Committee and Special Counsel Mueller that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump. And it would have helped eliminate a perceived threat to the legitimacy of Donald Trump's presidency, that he was only elected because of the help he received from President Putin. I now yield to Mr. Schiff.
The Majority Leader is recognized.
Demand that we take a 15-minute break at this point.
Without objection, so ordered.
This is their first break of the afternoon after hearing Representative Sylvia Garcia, the second in line today as Democrats on day two. The House managers laying out their case against the president. I'm with Chuck Todd, our moderator of Meet the Press. Chuck, we heard a lot about the Bidens today, almost a pre-buttal for what is going to come on Saturday.
It was something that we were engaging Carol in on this.
Carol Lam with us as well, yeah.
Right, which is, okay, today was about the abuse of power, and they wanted to explain the legal, how they believe their evidence ties into this. But there was a point, especially with Congresswoman Garcia up there, where you're like, okay, they seem to be trying to at least soften wherever it is they think the president's team will go. This feels, at least so far, has felt as much pre-buttal. Even on the abuse of power charge, and Ari Melber previewed this with me earlier this morning, saying he thought perhaps the Dershowitz theory was getting into the heads a little bit of the Democrats, and they're almost a bit overly defensive of this, and they really don't need to be.
And Carol Lam, does that set the Democrats up for some pressure to allow Hunter Biden on the stand if we get to a witness stage here?
Well, I don't really think so, because because this is such a strange format now that people are talking about things without knowing whether they're actually going to come into evidence or not. You know, we're having clips of Alan Dershowitz giving a 1998 interview. That's not technically in evidence. So I think what they're doing, I think that Chuck is absolutely right. They are previewing the defense, but they are putting those issues out there and then clubbing them into the ground, with as much force as they can, so that when those defenses are actually presented, the senators will have in their minds what the rebuttal to those statements are.
Yeah, and we should point out to our audience, the House managers get 3 days, and then the president's lawyers will get their 3 days. So they get the final word.
They had 16 hours plus remaining when the day started, so over 2 days. So they did use they could average 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
There's been, I think, assumption and perhaps hope on some that they don't use all 24 hours.
Right, and Lester, what you were saying is correct. You have to anticipate, when you're not going to have the last word in terms of the presentation, you have to anticipate what the other party is going to say, and then you say, when you hear that, keep this in mind.
And that's why these little hallway sound bites and news conferences are important to both sides, because it's a way to get in when they don't have their turn to be able to express themselves. Right. Let's go to the Capitol now. Casey Hunt is standing by. What do you got, Casey?
Hi, Lester. I was in the chamber for a lot of what you just saw, and the same thing occurred to me that you all have been talking about. The word Biden was repeated over and over and over and over again, and we're positioned in the gallery such that you can't see the TV screens that are presented that the senators are looking at. And when I walked out and saw that they had put these false claims up on the screen and then sort of listed what they were talking about, it made a little more sense to me. But you also saw lawmakers on the floor kind of looking at each other a little askance, even on the Republican side. There seemed to be a certain degree of surprise that they spent so much time focused in on this. And, I think this is one of the central challenges that Democrats have been grappling with since President Trump was, frankly, running for office originally and throughout his presidency, which are, the pieces of information that he puts out there. And the Washington Post and NBC News, of course, have done a lot of debunking of the many false claims that he has put out there throughout. That puts Democrats in a position to have to debunk them all the time, and the very act of debunking it means you have to hear it all again. And I think that's what really struck me sitting there listening to this. It was very different from what we heard yesterday in terms of talking about the president's conduct. This instead walking through the conspiracy theories, how they came to be, and then pointing out and underscoring the fact that this is not true. And, this is already something that the Biden campaign has been dealing with as well. They are careful to underscore when you talk to people close to the Biden campaign that, every time you talk about any of these allegations, you have to underscore the fact that they've been disproven. But that sort of back and forth is something that has certainly, while perhaps part of our politics before, it's risen to new heights in the Trump administration. So all of that was kind of playing out here. We also, Lester, in a little bit of color for you, I was just downstairs grabbing a cup of coffee from the Senate carryout. It's in the basement, a couple floors underneath us. The arguments were still going on, but we spotted Jerry Nadler ordering a meatball sub, waiting in line with all of the rest of us to get his lunch this afternoon, Lester.
All right, well, I want to ask you, since you were in there, give us a little sense of the character. We've heard reports of, under pain of imprisonment, that some of the senators are nonetheless stretching their legs and walking around a bit. What have you seen?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is, hard to sit for hours and hours on end and stay awake. I think as any of us who have sat through college lectures perhaps know, there are these very strict rules, but I think, people have been pushing the edges of those rules pretty much since the beginning of all of this. Today it was the fly spinners on the desks, Lester.
Yeah, all right. The president's attorney, private attorney Jay Sekulow, is speaking right now. Let's listen to him.
We're going to do that. I see nothing that has changed in the last now day and a half of their 2.5 days that we've been going here. And we're going to begin our robust case when the Senate says it's time to start and move forward. I'll answer some questions.
Are you going to go short on Saturday?
Go ahead.
Are you going to go short on Saturday?
The Senate sets the rules on how we go, so we'll see how that goes.
Do you want to save it for the weekdays? Do you plan to use up all 24 hours of the time that you've been
I said this yesterday. Here's the thing. We're going to use a sufficient amount of time to not only defend our case and point out the inconsistencies of their case, but we're going to do it in an appropriate manner. We're not going to try to run the clock out. We're going to do it what we think, as our legal team thinks, is appropriate to present our case. We'll make that determination. We're still in their process. We'll make that determination after.
Will the White House use documents that they refuse to turn over to the House?
I'm not going to look. The White House will use and we will use appropriate documents that will be admissible for what this record is. That's the way we're going to. I'm not going to respond to anything in particular. Yes.
What do you make of the fact that four of the president's allies, some players in this trial, Lindsey Graham, Alan Dershowitz, even the Attorney General, have made statements to the effect of abuse of power is impeachable?
You know, we've got something very different than what you're hearing up here. You're hearing, video clips of testimony. We've got lawyers that are going to be put forward when our side of the case goes that represents multiple schools of thought on what is and is not an impeachable offense. But they have one thing in common, that the actions alleged and the actions of the president do not reach that level, no matter which school of thought you're on. And we're not afraid to put out both of those schools of thought, because our position is you still have to meet basic fundamental constitutional obligations, and they haven't. Next.
How much work do you think you have to convince?
Jay Sekulow, the attorney for the president, previewing a little of his case and reacting to what he's heard so far. We want to bring in now Senator Amy Klobuchar, who was stopped by our camera during this break. Senator, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lester. It's great to be on.
So what do you think about how these arguments are resonating with Republican senators? Are you getting any body language clues? What's your thought?
Well, I do see a lot of them looking down at their shoes. I would have a real heavy heart if I were them, if they end up voting against witnesses. One of the arguments that I have found most resonated with them is the national security argument, and that's what we're hearing. This president basically denied a White House meeting. He denied giving aid to a foreign country that is a fledgling democracy that has long been our foreign policy to support. And that is what I think when you heard House Manager Crow yesterday talk about the 60,000 Americans that are on the front line in Europe, when you heard about the Ukrainians, thousands of them have died when trying to protect their own democracy. I just kept looking over at my Republican colleagues and thinking, come on. Or when you heard about Ambassador Yovanovitch basically being threatened by the president when he told the president of Ukraine something's going to happen, things are going to happen to her. This just is not consistent with those of my colleagues who profess to care about the security of America or our allies.
Do you think that the case has been made that will perhaps make the idea of witnesses a bit more likely? Do you think there's been enough here that maybe has put some pressure on that issue?
Well, that's my hope, because at the very least, no matter how they vote in the end, they should want to get at the truth. When you look at American history, as that was the focus today about previous impeachment hearings, Richard Nixon had his top people testify. Documents have not been squelched. I was involved in the last impeachment of a federal judge. I was in the small group of senators that heard evidence. We had dozens of witnesses come forward. This is unheard of for a White House to stop a fair trial. And I think that's where the American people are listening to that. So just bring the witnesses on.
Senator, my colleague Chuck Todd is here and has a question for you.
Oh, good.
Senator, whenever there is a stalemate in the Senate, you're usually among the group of senators that tries to find a gang to break it up.
That's
right?
correct.
I know
Yes.
that is your thing. Well, this is one of those moments. And I know you have a personal relationship at times that's worked well with Lindsey Graham. People like Lamar Alexander, people like James Lankford. Tell me, I know how you are. I know you're having conversations. Have any of them turned into negotiations?
Right now we're at this stage where people are just talking to them, at least I am, and saying, come on, don't you want to have some witnesses? And that is what we're trying to get at right now. Witnesses, documents, something. And I'm just hoping they remember that they don't serve at the power, really at the pleasure of the president. They are here for the respect for the people. It's the people that sent them to Washington, D.C.
You know how to read these guys.
You
know how to read them on the other side. Are you getting a sense that there's some of these more independent-minded senators that are ready to oh, can't we cut a deal? I mean, I know how they. Are you seeing that yet or no?
I just see them looking guilty, looking concerned about what's the evidence that's coming forward, that the House managers, the plea for our democracy, this idea that, hey, come on, at some point all this evidence is going to come up. And do you want to be part of this cover-up too? This will be your legacy. And that part of it is, I think, what really resonates. Why are they here? Why did they come here except to uphold our democracy? So many of them are students of history themselves. So that is what I think is actually the thing that might turn them to at least agree with us that we should have witnesses. I don't know what it'll do in terms of their decision in the end, but at the very least we should get all the testimony so they're not part of the cover-up with the Trump administration.
Senator, the gang is all here. Andrea Mitchell has a question for you.
Well, obviously, we're right before Iowa, and Iowa is a crucible for you. You are the Midwestern candidate, other than Pete Buttigieg, who has a real chance to break through in Iowa, and you are trapped or stuck or honored to be a juror in Washington. I know it's frustrating and you've got surrogates, but isn't it hurting you more given the fact that Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg are out there with large crowds every day?
Well, you know, I did a teletown hall last night when the impeachment hearing ended. It was 10 p.m. Washington time, 9 p.m. Iowa time, and we had 12,000 people that got on that call, and many of them stayed on for quite a while. And that's what I'm going to have to do. I have to work around it, and I have to have faith that the people in all four of those early states where I have been gaining momentum, particularly Iowa and New Hampshire, that they're going to know what's going on here, and they're going to understand when they see that those two other candidates are in those states, that there's three of us that are simply doing our constitutional job. We don't really have a choice. And like I just had 3 more legislative endorsements from key legislators in Iowa, all of them gathered at the Capitol. I have more than any other candidate in this race when it comes to legislators and former legislators. Those people are going to be in the grocery stores. They're going to be out campaigning for me, and that's what I have to hope, that democracy works, because what we're doing here is the real work of democracy. Campaigning isn't always the real work of democracy. This is democracy in action.
It is certainly serious business. Senator Amy Klobuchar, appreciate it. I know your time is short, and we appreciate you spending a few minutes with us.
All right. Thank you.
All right, let's find out how this is being read down at the White House. Hallie Jackson, we know the president had a short appearance. Did we hear anything from him?
We didn't, Lester, and this is now several days now where he's left the White House or come back to the White House and didn't stop and talk to reporters as he has so often done in the past on his way to events. He is heading down, I should note now, to South Florida, his Doral resort. You can see the video there. He waved. We tried to get him to come over and talk. He did not want to. He has been rather vociferously verbal on Twitter, however, where he has been making his case essentially. And let me take you behind the scenes as the president is on his way to the Republican National Committee's winter retreat down in Florida. I am told by multiple sources today the president has a lot of frustration, Lester, and here's why. This is a moment when his defense team doesn't get to say anything on the Senate floor. They are not allowed to until at least probably Saturday at this point. And there is frustration on the part of the president, I'm told, that his team is not able to get their messaging out there in front of those senators. So what are they doing? Well, you just witnessed it here live, as you and Chuck and Andrea so capably handled. Jay Sekulow, the president's lead attorney, one of them, coming out and speaking with reporters. Expect to see a lot of that at the breaks today and tomorrow, because the White House and the defense team want to counter-program the messaging coming in from House Democrats. They want an opportunity to pre-butt on the rebuttal for House Democrats before their opening arguments take place. I know that there are multiple meetings happening in the mornings every day with the president's strategic team, with the impeachment team, to talk through how they're going to try to get essentially their voice out to the American people, because that's what this is about. They want to make sure that the president does. Americans are hearing his side of the story and what he has to say. And I got to tell you, there was a telling moment right as this trial began today, as the proceedings began. One of the president's top advisors, Eric Ueland, who handles a lot of the legislative stuff here at the White House, walked past reporters and quipped, apparently with a bit of a smile, "I can't wait to get our revenge." But I do think that is telling in the way that the White House is thinking about the upcoming weekend, Monday, Tuesday, when their arguments will happen, and how they want to get at what House Democrats are saying. Watch for them to use some of the words of the witnesses that the Democrats are presenting and the testimony that the Democrats are talking about to their advantage by citing, for example, different portions of the transcript in which these witnesses actually speak positively and praise the president and his policies, Lester, when it comes to military aid to Ukraine, for example, in the first place. So lots of moving pieces here, and we are continuing to watch all of it from the White House.
Hallie Jackson, we'll be going back and forth to you. Thanks so much. Chuck?
You know, it struck me, and I meant to ask you this earlier, Carol. This is the second time Hallie's reported that this is the White House strategy. They want to take some of the more damning witnesses and present positive things they've said. Isn't the unintended consequence of that is giving more credibility to the prosecution's witnesses? It just strikes me as an interesting decision by them that they want to put out the good things that were said by these witnesses that have painted a very damning picture.
Right. Well, I've said this before. One defense tactic is to say, I don't want to try this case. I want to try a different case. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, of course, they will pull out more positive things to say. And it does give those witnesses perhaps more credibility, but they're hoping that people will just focus on the words that they're highlighting and sort of forget about the words that were said before. And that's why the order of the timing of who gets to present when is actually very important. It's very important with an ordinary lay jury. Senators are used to parsing out things and remembering things. I don't think there's really going to be any question in these senators' minds what actually happened here.
But it does indicate their nervousness about the credibility of these folks.
Absolutely.
Right. And in some ways, it felt to me as a signal of a bit of weakness. Yeah. That's all.
I want to get to Chuck Schumer, who's speaking, but very quickly, Carol, you had mentioned earlier that in a criminal trial, prosecution gets 2 bites of the apple in the closing. In the closing,
yes, the prosecution goes first, then the defense goes, then the prosecution gets a rebuttal argument because they have the burden of proof, as they technically do here. But in these rules, it appears that the 4 hours will get divided equal time between the House managers and the defense, and it appears that the defense will actually go last. It's not entirely clear from the written rules.
All right, let's go to the Capitol. I understand that Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, is speaking right now.
Knife through the heart of those false arguments ahead of time. They did some yesterday, they did 3 today, they're going to do more of them. And I think that that will help make the case. One other point. We see, when you see the facts, we need the relevant witnesses and documents. We are standing by the 4 witnesses we need and the 4 sets of documents we need. There are no discussions with Republicans. We're not trading. We're not whittling down the list. Those 4 are all very important. And if we want a fair trial, a trial that brings out the evidence, just the facts, the best way to go is the 4 witnesses we've asked for and the 4 documents. We're making good progress. Every day, more and more of the public is watching, and more of the public is saying to their senators, Democrat and Republican, have a fair trial. And so I am more hopeful than ever that 4 conscientious, brave Republicans will come forward and tell Mitch McConnell, you can't shut this down without witnesses, you can't shut this down without documents. One other point. This morning they were saying, the Republicans, they heard nothing new. Well, they're the very ones who voted against new documents, new witnesses, new facts. Can't have it both ways. Ready for a question or two.
Are you lobbying the Republicans or the Marlins behind the scenes?
Look, Democrats and Republicans talk to one another. I'm not going to get into any specific conversations. It happens all the time among members, all the time.
Do you think the minds of anyone? Do you think the minds of anyone in that room have been changed?
Look, this is an amazing process. I did see when Schiff concluded last night that almost every Republican was focused on what he was saying. I think this is the first time that many Republican senators and lots of the public is hearing the whole case start to finish, laid out specifically, clearly, and with some degree of granularity. If you just listen to, I think a lot of our senators probably got the story in snippets from Fox News. And when Fox News has covered this, when I've watched, they've left out large parts that are incriminating to the president, and they've sometimes distorted. So what happens in that room sometimes, hopefully, will have a little bit of magic, and it will weigh heavily on the shoulders of some of the Republicans, and they will go to Mitch, and they will say, at least we need a fair trial, at least we need documents and witnesses. And one other point, as the public sees the need for witnesses and documents, and there was a new poll this morning, it got even higher, that will have an effect on senators. So that's good too.
Senator Lindsey Graham.
Chuck Schumer pausing in the hallway there to talk to
I have
reporters,
seen-
share his view of where things are on the right hand of your screen. You saw the president boarding Air Force One for a Republican gathering in Florida. We want to move away, if we can, from this coverage just for a moment and take an opportunity to share some sad news with you. The loss of a giant of American journalism. Jim Lehrer has died. For 36 years until his retirement in 2011, Lehrer anchored the flagship news hour on PBS, 20 of those years with co-anchor Robert McNeil. From his start as a newspaper reporter in Dallas to his years on PBS, Jim Lehrer was among the best in our business and the winner of just about every journalism award there is. Over his long career, he moderated an amazing 12 presidential debates. It's more than anyone. PBS NewsHour anchor Judy Woodruff said today she was heartbroken at Lehrer's passing, calling him, quote, the standard for fair, probing, and thoughtful journalism. All of us at NBC News send our condolences to his family, colleagues, and friends. Jim Lehrer was 85. And Andrea Mitchell, please share your thoughts. You knew him well.
Jim was a very, very close friend. He was the standard bearer. He was the gold standard of newsmen, a newsman's newsman. He always used to tell people, his staff, his colleagues, it's not about us. He was self-effacing, he's funny, he's a family man, a Marine, born in Wichita to the son of a bus line owner, and he could call out those bus stops along the Wichita line, did it at commencements to the amusement of audiences across the country and at PBS gatherings. He moved to Dallas, became a newspaper reporter, was there and was one of the people questioning Lee Harvey Oswald, why did you kill the president? And he said that moment for both him and Robin McNeil, who was the NBC guy there, Jim was there for the Dallas papers, was just an overwhelming and shattering moment for them for their entire journalism lives. The NewsHour grew out of their 250 hours of coverage, live gavel to gavel and analysis afterwards of the Watergate hearings.
That's kind of what brought them together.
That brought them together, and it created the PBS NewsHour, and then it became the NewsHour with the McNeil-Lehrer NBC NewsHour.
Partnership, right?
It was an NBC partnership in 1992. We jointly simulcast our convention coverage with Tom Brokaw and Jim and the rest of the teams, and so we worked together. His daughter, one of his three daughters, Lucy, worked for NBC Nightly News for a while. His wife, Kate, lifelong love and partner, a novelist. They met in Texas and married and lived in Washington, were friends and neighbors of ours. And there was no one better.
Andrea, thank you for your heartfelt comments and our condolences, as we said, to all those who knew him. And
as he would say, Semper
and I was
Fidelis.
very close to somebody close to you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is one of the big stories that he would have wanted a piece of, certainly what we're watching right now in Washington, the impeachment trial of President Trump. Let's go to Pete Williams now, our justice correspondent. Pete?
Well, it strikes me that this main point here about whether the president abused his power is, I think, the stronger of the two and the more important of the two counts. And it requires the senators to decide whether the president's conduct here, which the House managers have laid out, is simply egregious enough to fit that definition. It's a charge that's never gotten to the Senate floor. It was one of the impeachment counts in the Nixon case, but not in the Clinton case, not in the Andrew Johnson case. So it's the first time the Senate trial has featured this question of abuse of power. The second count, of course, is obstruction. And there I think it's a little more complicated for the House managers because the administration does have at least a plausible argument on why it's not allowing some of these people to testify. Now, it's a very controversial question about whether there's an absolute immunity from congressional testimony, from congressional subpoenas, and this whole point about executive privilege. There, at least, the administration has some history of administrations on both sides making the same claim. But it seems to me this really, Lester, is the big question. Is what the president did serious enough, egregious enough to merit impeachment? I think that's where the meat of this whole thing is on this today.
Are you surprised, Pete, that we have not reached a point where they've gone into a closed session to argue any point? I know we kind of anticipated that going in.
No, because I think they're kind of marching through the structure that has been laid out here. I don't think they're going to do that until both sides have made their presentations, maybe even after the questions. My guess is that if they are going to go into closed session to debate something, it'll be over whether they want to get more witnesses or subpoena documents.
All right, so they are on a break. We do not see the picture right now coming from Senate TV of the Senate chamber. They turn that on. They have control of that, and we'll see when folks are gathering again. But Casey Hunt is at the Capitol. It can set the scene.
Lester, we are waiting, of course, for this break to resume. Every one of these has so far been longer than we expected, which is, I have to say, par for the course for the U.S. Senate after covering this place for many years. But, I'm looking to see in the next phase, Democrats are privately saying, they still feel good about where things stand today. I'm interested to see if we pivot away from these questions about Hunter Biden and how, last time, yesterday, we saw the arguments take kind of a significant shift in closing. And, to a certain extent, I think that's by design because, while obviously we are sitting here talking, many Americans are at work, their places of business, they are picking up their kids from school. And there is, I think, an interest from Democrats to make sure that when people get home, they take their shoes off, they flip on the TV, they're able to see some of the best parts of the argument. So we are waiting and watching for that, Lester.
All right, thanks very much, Casey. Carol Lamb, I think I asked you this question yesterday, but 24 hours is a lot of time to make a case where you have no fresh witnesses, you have no fresh documents. You're essentially talking and summing up what you had gathered in a hearing. Is that going to become a problem as we get a little farther into this day and even in tomorrow?
Having more time to talk is never a problem for lawyers, especially
but it's a
trial
good
lawyers.
thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I think that they've been the House managers have been very strategic in the way they're using their time, and they obviously made an agreed upon decision to use today to tackle some of the expected defenses. When you talk to a lot of people about the allegations here, they say, well, the Bidens did the same thing.
All right, well, here is Adam Schiff
care of
now
that.
as we end the break and get back to the trial.
Senators, I'm going to pick up where my colleague from Texas left off, but I wanted to begin by underscoring a few of the points that she made in listening to her presentation that really leapt out at me in a way they hadn't leapt out at me before. But first I wanted to address, my colleague shared a number of slides showing the polling strength of Joe Biden vis-a-vis the president as a demonstration of his motive. The fact that he went after these political investigations to undermine someone that he was deeply concerned about. This is an appropriate point for me to make the disclaimer: the House managers take no position in the Democratic primary for president. I don't want to lose a single more vote than necessary. But those polls do show a powerful motive that Donald Trump had, a motive that he didn't have the year before or the year before that. A motive that he didn't have when he allowed the aid to go to Ukraine without complaint or issue in 2017 or 2018. It was only when he had a growing concern with Joe Biden's candidacy that he took a sudden interest in Ukraine and Ukraine funding and the withholding of that aid. But I also want to underscore what the president said in that July 25th call. When my colleague showed you again that transcript from July 25th where the president says, I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine, they say CrowdStrike. Now, my colleagues have explained what that theory is about that server, that CrowdStrike server. The crazy theory that it was Ukraine that hacked the Democratic server, and that server was whisked away to Ukraine and hidden there so that the investigators, the FBI, couldn't look at this server. Okay, that's what Donald Trump was raising in that conversation with President Zelensky. Now, I bring this point up again, because you may hear from my colleagues the president's lawyers, as we heard during the testimony in the House, that the concern was over Ukrainian interference in the election, and why isn't it possible that both Russia and Ukraine interfered in the election? Now, never mind, that's contrary to all the evidence. But it's important to point out here that we're not talking about generic interference. We're not talking about, as we heard from some of my colleagues in the House, a tweet from a Ukrainian here or an op-ed written by somebody there and equating it with the kind of systematic interference of the Russians. What we're talking about here, what the president is talking about here, is a very specific conspiracy theory going to the server itself, meaning that it was Ukraine that hacked the Democratic server, not the Russians. This theory was brought to you by the Kremlin. Okay? So we're not talking about generic interference. We're talking about the server. We're talking about CrowdStrike. At least that's what Donald Trump wanted to investigate or announced. This completely bogus, Kremlin-pushed conspiracy theory. Now, I was also struck by that video you saw of Tom Bossert, the former Homeland Security advisor for the president, in which he talked about how completely debunked and crazy this conspiracy theory is. And there was that, rather glib line that was, he admitted was glib, but nonetheless made a point. The 3 or 5 ways to impeach oneself, and the third way was to hire Rudy Giuliani. Now, it struck me in watching that clip again that it's important to emphasize that Rudy Giuliani is not some Svengali here who has the president under his control. There may be an effort to say, okay, the human hand grenade Rudy Giuliani, it's all his fault. He had the president in his grip. And even though the U.S. intelligence agencies and the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee and everyone else told the president time after time, this is nonsense, the Russians interfered, not the Ukrainians, that he just couldn't shake himself of what he was hearing from Rudy Giuliani. You can say a lot of things about President Trump, but he is not led by the nose by Rudy Giuliani. And if he is willing to listen to his personal lawyer over his own intelligence agencies, his own advisors, then you can imagine what a danger that presents to this country. Now, my colleague also played for you that interview with Director Wray, and again, I was just struck anew by that interview. And in that interview, Director Wray says, we have no information that indicates that Ukraine interfered with the 2016 presidential election. That is Donald Trump's director of the FBI. We have no information that indicates Ukraine interfered with the 2016 election. None, as in zero. The reporter then says, when you see politicians pushing this notion, are you concerned about that in terms of the impact on the American public? And the director says, well, look, there's all kind of people saying all kind of things out there. Well, yes, there are, but this person was the President of the United States. When he says there's all kinds of people out there saying all kinds of things, what he's really saying is the President of the United States. It's one thing if someone off the street says it, but when it's coming from the President of the United States, you can see what a danger it is if it is patently false and it is promulgated by the Russians.
Okay.
And again, the reporter says, and we heard...
Now that we're in the last 20, 30 minutes of the market, let's take a look at what's going on. Nothing has really happened up until now, right?
Yeah. Who said hi?
Oh, that was H.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Alright, let's see. Holy Netflix. That was a huge up candle.
Yeah. Has to break 346, right?
I forgot, are we in calls?
Of course.
Are we?
Yeah.
What did we get in on? What'd you count?
Norse. Right here. Around right here, I think.
Oh, so we're just break even probably?
Yeah, probably up like 3 cents.
$3. Let me check.
That's the break.
It was completely against Jay's points.
346.
Let me just take a look at it. Yeah, it's. I mean, no, it's actually up quite a bit.
Really?
306%, which is not right.
Yeah.
Bought it for. We're up 7 on it though, which is 12%.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is a good call. It held.
Where did it go down to?
I don't know. What time did we get it?
Nothing interesting.
What time did we get it?
Do you want to look at the history first?
Yeah.
2 hours, 118. Well, so that would be 11. I mean, 12. 18. Yeah, 12:18 sounds about right. Right here.
Yeah, 60. About 60.
42.
65 now.
Yeah.
So I got I got it at 57.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember now. Okay, so I made 12% on it, so that's a lot actually. On the final today's, I wasn't expecting to make anything out of it though. Not today.
Yeah. I think maybe a gap up.
Gap up tomorrow?
Yeah.
I actually, you know what? I was pretty good at finding gaps, so let me see if I can find another. Like,
The only reason I'm saying that is because so far with Beyond and Tesla,
yeah,
they've had a big move up and then they've kept on gapping up. But those are two different stocks. So I don't know if
look at this stock that I'm looking at, Amazon.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I'm so confused about this stock.
Amazon?
Yeah.
But it is moving up, actually.
Yeah.
I kind of want to do something about that. This wick gives me a lot of is very telling to me. I think that this initial down run and then pull up, especially this final run.
Yeah.
I think that's a good sign. Maybe we should do like a weekly on it. Let me take a look at the weeklies.
1910 maybe.
Do I have the weeklies? I don't have the weeklies. Let me try doing that then. So I just need to duplicate this one. Didn't I change the way this looked? I thought I did. I didn't. I'll do that in a second.
Weekly.
Yeah. 3 years 1 week. Alright, cool. Okay, as far as weekly goes, the fact that it held green after this doji, you would expect a down run, but you didn't get it. So we held, we pushed back, you got up, you hit this top. This thing, it wicks off really well. So I actually do like this. And we're pushing into next week, which means I can get the next week's for kind of cheap. Cheaper right now. Because we're pushing towards the end of this week into this earnings. So
Can you see how the earnings are priced? Actually, I'll check it.
Yeah, but I'm gonna probably do something. I'm gonna look at the options right now.
What date is the earnings? 31st?
It's on the 30th. I want to play into it and then change something around it. 30th is the day that they're doing it.
Oh yeah, they're so expensive.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Into earnings?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do something into next week then. Holy shit, that's a lot of scrolling. Okay. Yeah. Okay, 1910.
Are you
by
kidding
next
me?
Week,
This one is $6. I mean, at the beginning of the week it was probably a K.
Yeah, I know. So
right?
these things lost a ton of value.
But these are 4K right off the bat.
Which week? The 31st. That's why I'm not looking.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at that one because if you think about it, okay, you see this price right
5K.
for next week. The way the price variances usually happen. This is obviously this week.
Yeah.
So if we were to look at this week, it's fucking crazy expensive. It's like 4 times more.
Yeah.
Right? So what I'm thinking is we could go out an extra week and pull back. Because I'm not trying to play earnings. I'm just trying to play this week. Today is what, Thursday?
Yeah, so this week might not be.
So it's not gonna fly now. Alright, this is too many. 14 is not enough, so let's do 20.
Maybe execute on the debit.
We could do that. That's not a terrible
How much
idea.
are those?
Huh?
So how much is the difference between? I'd say
About
9.
100.
So yeah.
In the money is about 100. But the prices are off by what? 350? 250?
Yeah.
So that's how much you should expect the spread. So it's already kind of close to max. That's how Amazon works. So I feel like you'd be better off doing a credit spread.
On both sides, maybe an iron condor. Are they close to the?
I don't want to do a condor on Amazon.
On Amazon.
That sounds risky because we tried a condor on Chipotle and that fucking killed. So,
yeah, but I mean, you would do it where it's,
okay.
where you're taking advantage of the pregame.
Do you think we could hit 1910 by tomorrow?
Yeah, I was saying like if you predict a gap up tomorrow.
1910 is like literally this mark. I think we could hit.
I think it would be the 1900s would be a good gap.
But the 1910 is the cheapest that I can hold for.
How much is it?
It's 150.
Oh, that's not cheap.
Huh? That's not cheap, but it's not relatively expensive
like
for this week.
Oh no, I'm thinking like a debit.
Oh, I'm saying
up.
just playing it for this week because the debit is not gonna is not gonna
make it. No, for sure not.
I think that the risk is kind of low relative to I think what we could get out of it. That's why I think we could hit 1910.
Yeah, but then again, this is just a bet.
Well, I mean, this is all betting, right? So what my idea is that I think based on this and based on these charts, I have a kind of bullish bearing as far as Amazon goes. Like, it's kind of been stuck, but like whenever it gets stuck.
That, but like I don't know if that's gonna happen tomorrow or maybe Monday. You know what I mean? Because think about it. Like you put in 150 for it to expire tomorrow.
Yeah, but as long as it doesn't go against, it'll kind of hold its value. It's lost most of the.
You can look
theta.
at the theta.
Yeah, I'll do that then. Let's see.
See what you'll end up with next day.
The interest. Okay. It's like $30. Oh, that's Vegas.
No.
It's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but that's how Friday is anyway.
Yeah, no, but that's what you'll lose in a day. The day after.
I mean, in the full day of expiration, that is what will go against me. But if it hits in the money, then it could actually. But that's my thinking. My thinking is that I think there could potentially be a fairly big move. This candle is what's kind of hammering it in for me. This candle isn't gonna have some weak position following. It might. It could be just another doji, but it also very well might just be a big one, like a much bigger candle, a much bigger change. So we had one here, right? And then we had a gap down that started here. Actually, we started here, but it started. So this is at 1906, and it gapped down to 1897. That's not a lot, but it's not a lot. And because this is a daily, this is a weekly kind of bet. I think that. So I'm thinking that with this type of move, you get a lot more out of it for every however much it moves, and so I actually genuinely think that it might actually go up quite a bit tomorrow. It might not. I mean, I think it very well might not, but I think it's gonna react to this little range that is here. So I kind of want to place my bet against that about whether or not this will work. This is not a safe move, but I still want to give it a try. So I will.
It's not about the money, man. It's about the method.
This is my method. I think it's going to work.
No.
I think it's going to work.
All right, then play it paper.
Ugh. Oh, Lord Jesus, how you deceived me. All right, what did you say? You said that the spread between two will get
if you're right on the gap and it gets in the money, then you're gonna make because there's between those two is $30, but between the whole spreads it's 250. So you risk 230 to make whatever.
I risk 230. You mean 30?
Yeah, you risk 30 to make 210 or 220.
That is a bet I'm kind of willing to take. But at that level, I'd probably go closer then. Not that much closer. Difference here is 50. These are kind of losing its value right now as we speak, so that's good.
Yeah.
35.
Can you sell on this?
No, you can't, because we're not margined here. If we were, that would have been so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Bring me my phone. So I'm gonna do it.
Are you gonna do it on yours?
Let's do it on yours or on ends. Do you have ends on your phone?
Yeah.
Can you open it?
Oh no, not on my phone.
You don't have it? No. What is on your phone?
My $2.
Can you switch it out?
Yeah.
Or you could try to do it with that $2.
No, $1.
I miss it being 100. At that rate, we could have just bet.
I miss it being 1,000.
I miss it being almost 2,000. You remember that? Yeah. Life is just a series of mistakes. Right, let me fix this up while you're logging in. All right, we gotta log these times that we put in these orders, so we know when we made the decision. So, for example, tomorrow, if Amazon does a hella gap fill, or a hella gap up, I can come back to this point in the video and just chastise the shit out of you for it. So, that's the plan anyway. So, okay.
Hey, just risk versus reward, baby.
The risk is pretty small for a huge fucking reward. Alright, now we can switch between weeklies. I think the weekly is stronger. Actually, oh my god, yes. Okay, where does this reach? Please be 1910. That is a very small change, actually. So we're pushing to close above where we were last week, or closing at exactly the same places where we were last week. So that's kind of interesting.
Figure out that.
Oh, my throat. I think I get a little run up with some shitty news. Can I buy something for like $10? I can't believe people are still pricing in the 2010s as if it's gonna make something.
So that shit. Just kidding. Josh is one of his wires, though.
Who? Jay?
Oh yeah.
No, actually, I think we can say Josh because Josh is the trading fraternity. So. No, he is what?
He is the 2000s.
I'm usually right with these Amazon gaps, so I feel like I don't know if I'll be right today because I feel like my thinking as far as this Amazon gap went was based on because you said something. You're like, I wonder if anything's gonna gap up. So I think it might have been influenced on something you said. Were you able to log in?
Almost there.
McDonald's is the dumbest easy play ever.
Uppers?
Mm-hmm. When is their earnings? It's like in the next few days? Or is it next week? It's next week.
producer? You come here before I say anything. Is it different? Is it not that?
That changed. Here? I don't know. So I'll just do it on my laptop.
Oh wait, no. I literally missed an M. Unless you did that.
Which one?
Oh wait.
Alright, we got 10 minutes to close. We're trying to determine if there's anything worth buying. Well, I'm gonna set up this Amazon Play. We're doing this this week or next week? This week, right?
Yeah, this week.
Hey, we're at 1905 again. The Netflix is paying right now.
Really?
Yeah, we're up 30. 22.
Whoa, what?
So 37% on Netflix
Oh,
right now.
nice.
Yeah. Oh, right, you
That
know.
is so good. Nice.
Yeah.
Where the hell?
Good call. Who said it? You and me.
Both of us.
Well, we have videographic evidence now. Let me look up what the login is. Come here.
God, I should put a cap on that before it trips.
Yeah. Before you trip on it. Oh yeah, it was this password. Why is it such a weird password?
Yeah, put that in now.
One, three, 4, 3. There's a space, dude.
Oh, what the hell? Okay. Code sent now.
Amazon is dojing to my phone?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm doing this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I wanted to do the 1910s. And I'll do the 19... So the difference between this is about 20. The difference between this is about 20 also. The difference between this is 30. So I'm going to I'm going to buy this one. I'm going to sell the other. Okay. So I'm selling the 1907 and I'm buying the 1910.
Okay.
This is a YOLO for next week. It's costing me $24. Yeah. One sec.
So Intel has earnings next week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna look at the charts. Oh my god. Oh wait, that's the week. I thought that was a day.
No. You don't need to do what you just did. Just click on the arrow. So switch it back to the week.
I know.
And click the arrow.
Okay. So.
Dude, I am not getting filled on this.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll just wait a bit, I guess.
Yeah, Jesus, the price is like skyrocketing right now.
58 put.
Market just tanked.
58 put.
Fill. Alright, fucking finally. Alright. I'm filled.
Nice.
Holy shit.
What?
Dude, what the fuck is going on?
What do you mean?
I don't know.
Netflix?
Yeah, one of our positions just blew the fuck up. It went up like 40 something.
Oh, it just said 350. That's why. From 345 to 350.
Yeah, but now Robinhood's updating weird. It's doing that thing again.
I hate this thing. Yeah, well, I think it's gonna gap up tomorrow.
Well, my Amazon thing literally just tanked.
Went down even more?
Yeah. I bought it at, oh no, I bought it for 24, it's at 20 right now. But it's fluctuating like crazy right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fluctuating like a motherfucker.
Okay, got the 58 put.
For how much are you getting for? It's next week, right? Excuse me.
January 31st.
Okay.
58 put. Bought it for 25.
So I guess buy it for that amount. How many? One?
Yeah.
We good?
Yeah.
We're filled.
That was very quick.
Yes. So much for TD screwing over its customers.
Oh, only at the beginning of the day. Maybe not the end. Should we put both sides? Yeah, we should.
Did you get the puts too or calls?
I mean, he did before.
You got the calls already?
Yeah, he got the calls already beforehand.
Are the calls inflated right now?
Probably.
Do you want to get a call?
For an equal price, yeah.
When is the earnings?
Tomorrow. Tonight. I mean, right after market today.
Let me get it one.
So we have to make 100% on one.
Yeah, in order to undo one. Or sell the other one at not a loss. Cool. Cool. Alright.
This is for next week.
This is for next week,
Oh,
yeah.
that's pretty good, though.
So we got time on it.
Continuation.
Yeah, worst case. Well, the market's about to close. I think we're done with the stream for the day. But yeah, thank you guys for actually tuning in. Next time, ask some questions and stuff like that. It'll be fun. Yeah, see you guys next time.